thunder crashing everywhere, rain falling like crazy, and out comes this dude called the Holy Knight. He was looking satisfied, all smug, staring down his vampire enemy who had been hiding like a coward for half a year. The knight started mocking him, asking if he had fun hiding like a rat. That our knight wasn't holding back. He called the vampire a filthy monster, blamed him for a bunch of deaths, and even admitted that the way the vampire tricked the Holy Knights was actually pretty clever. But then he got all serious and said this was the end. God would not forgive the vampire now, and that his story stopped right here. Then, the knight pulled out his sword, totally full of himself, and told the poor vampire that he should be proud. Why? Because he was about to be killed by the famous vampire slayer himself. Our vampire fell to the ground, bleeding everywhere, while the knight stood over him, going off about how disgusting and twisted he looked. He claimed the vampire's creepy body was proof he was guilty and called him a liar who tricked the church and ran from its judgment. Wow, that's so creepy, guys. But then, out of nowhere, this knight just started laughing like a maniac. He revealed the craziest secret. This entire time, they didn't capture him right away on purpose. He never meant to catch the vampire quickly. That's right, he joined the hunt late on purpose and let the vampire escape, all so he could make this final showdown look super epic and send a message to everyone not to mess with the church. Right then, the vampire looked at the sword about to end his life and suddenly realized something. In this world, only the strongest survive. Nobody cared about what he wanted. Power was everything. The sword came down, slicing through the poor guy who had only run away because he learned that ugly truth. Lying there with pain all over his body, the vampire wondered if trying to escape was just a dumb idea. The knight kept trash-talking him, saying his very existence was a joke against the church and ruined everything they stood for. Finally, as he was dying, the vampire reached out to the sky, feeling nothing but regret and wishing he could have one more shot. Then, lights out, he died with the knight laughing in the background. But hold up, suddenly, the vampire shot awake, gasping for air inside a tent. Our boy freaked out, touching his neck and arms, totally shocked that he was still in one piece. His hands were bandaged, but his head was not rolling on the floor. He started whispering to himself in disbelief, thinking he was supposed to be dead right now. Nope, not a dream. He was really there, sitting in the same old tent from before the Holy Knights even started their hunt. He saw carvings on the wood, checked the date, and realized he somehow traveled back in time 6 months before the nightmare started. Our boy just stood there, frozen, trying to figure out if this was for real. But when he squeezed his fist and felt his own power, it hit him. This was a real second chance, and he better not screw it up. Now, he stood in the deep forest outside a place called Broadwin, a place where humans rarely pass through. He had been hiding there. He is Eugene. Normal people never went. But our MC, Eugene, had been hiding there. There, he just barely scraping by as a weak vampire, always hoping no one would notice him. He never really wanted human blood, but once, he gave in to his thirst, and that was game over. The next day, mercenaries swarmed in. 5 days later, Holy Knights stormed his place. He kept running for a month, then for a year, but those guys always found him in the end. For 12 years, he lived like that, eating animal blood and hiding like a scared animal. No clue how he got thrown back to the past, but one thing was clear. He refused to make the same dumb mistakes this time. So, Eugene took off running with a new plan. He swore that even if he died, he wouldn't die hiding like a loser. He needed to become strong enough to fight back, even if they came after him. Under the glow of a weird green moon, our MC made up his mind to use his vampire magic, even if it was risky. Then, our hero shared a simple rule about vampires. They get stronger by drinking blood, and if you drink from someone powerful, you get more power. But before he could finish that thought, his face went pale. He could sense something really nasty coming his way in the dark. The water nearby suddenly exploded, and out popped the Forest Lord, a straight-up nightmare monster with giant jaws ready to eat him. Eugene was stunned for a split second, but he dodged fast. His body was super weak though, and he could barely keep up. He figured out that if he could just scratch this monster, he might be able to drink its blood and steal some of its strength. So, our guy jumped high, ditching his old coward style. Why not? Hiding never worked, so there was no point being careful now. He slashed the beast with all he had. He's scared but desperate for a win. But man, did he get humbled. His sword snapped against the monster's thick skin and, before he could react, the beast whacked him with its tail so hard he went flying into the water, bleeding all over. The monster came at him again, and our boy finally admitted to himself that maybe he was in way over his head. These monsters, called wanderers, were supposed to be really rare and tough, and sometimes they even had magic stones inside them that were worth a fortune. He realized if he could get one, things could turn around for him, but right now, he was just too weak. Our protagonist got smashed again, hard, and he finally realized he hadn't taken this second chance seriously enough. This monster could kill him right here, before he even put up a fight. As the monster's jaws clamped around him, Eugene was dragged to the water. He then wondered if some part of him thought another chance was coming, if he died again. But then he told himself this is his last chance, and he wasn't that cocky. This was it. Now, the monster started to swallow him, and Eugene remembered all the horrible years he spent hiding and suffering for nothing. But this time, something wild happened. His eyes glowed red, bright as fire, and our boy decided no more hiding, no more crawling. He would fight for real, even if it killed him. In the end, he was finally able to bite and drink the monster's blood. Suddenly, magic symbols lit up all over his body, and he screamed in his mind that he was going to win. His muscles grew huge, power flooding through him. He was sure of one thing. If he didn't win now, he'd never get another chance. But the struggle did not stop here. Our MC was still in Monster's belly, tearing up its insides, grabbing at anything he could, because for him, losing means you're done for good. If he wanted to stay alive, he had to win. Right there. So, Eugene went for the monster's magic stone, and the next second, boom, the whole thing exploded in a shower of blood and guts. And guess who walked out of that bloody mess? Yup, our MC. He looked around like this was just another Tuesday, thinking that only people willing to step over bodies survive in this world. That's dark, bro. While standing in the middle of all that gore, Eugene remembered a promise he made to himself. If he ever got another shot at life, he wouldn't run away again. Our boy said he would fight, no matter how bad things got. So, under the moonlight, with his new super-powered body and his long hair flying in the breeze, dude was looking pretty cool. Not gonna lie, Eugene decided he'd take everything he wanted. Blood, victory, whatever. He was going to grab it with his own hands now. Then, things got interesting. Our protagonist noticed he didn't just get some power from the monster's blood, he also absorbed its magic stone, which packed a ton of energy. The monster's leftover body was just floating there, and Eugene checked out the big mana crystal it left behind. This crystal was different, bigger, a weird color. When he looked inside himself, he realized he could now make his skin turn into hard black scales. Our MC thought that maybe, just maybe, if he covered himself in these scales, he could walk around in the daylight without frying like a piece of bacon. But before all this, Eugene had done his homework. He knew about the monster from stories told by wandering mercenaries. The swamps near the village weren't always this big, but floods made them grow, which brought in monsters who started chomping on people. During one big mess, Eugene drank some of the monster's blood, killed a few mercenaries and ran away, but he never forgot how strong that blood made him feel. So, he came back to finish the job and absorb its full power with a note that he must avoid battles when he is not sure he will win. Even with this new power-up, our boy knew he wasn't strong enough to take on the Holy Knight, Young Dirt. And that guy was a legend. He could track monsters and undead anywhere, no matter how hard they tried to hide. Running was useless, so our MC knew he had to keep getting stronger until he was ready to go head-to-head. When the sun started coming up, Eugene knew he had to get out of there fast. He decided not to test his new scales just yet. But then, out of nowhere, someone started talking smack. He heard a sarcastic, mocking voice, trash-talking the dead monster for being a fake lord who ruined the nice lake and turned it into a swamp, and even thanked our boy for killing that loser. But this mysterious voice wasn't here to make friends. The water around him started moving weirdly, and the voice told Eugene he had to pay for polluting the place with all that blood. Then, a water fairy popped out. She said her name was Miran, and she was the guardian of the lake. She announced that this was her private spot, and threatened to curse and rip our boy apart for making such a bloody mess. Eugene? He just stared at her and asked who she was. A small, blue-winged creature that flew in front of his face, completely ignoring her soap opera threats. Turns out, Miran thought Eugene could not hear her fancy speech because only people with some rare spirit-spotting skill could even see or hear her, and our MC clearly didn't care. She freaked out for a second, realizing she was actually being seen, and then shyly asked if he heard her call him a bald vampire earlier. That was awkward. She introduced herself again, this time more polite, saying she'd been the lady of the lake until the monster turned her into a slave for 15 years. She tried to sound cool by saying she was the monster's business partner, helping him by cleaning the water to attract food. But honestly, she was just happy Eugene freed her, and she thanked him for it. She even called our boy smart, thinking the bald old man look he had before was just a disguise to trick the monster. While all that was happening, Eugene noticed one of his tattoos disappeared. Miran got curious and asked if his tattoos meant he was a great warrior or something. Our MC just told her he didn't know what they meant. They'd been on his body since he was born a vampire. The only thing he remembered about his own beginning was that he had 10 tattoos. Our boy never remembered much about his early life, and honestly, he was fine just living quietly and not overthinking it. But now he wondered if maybe these tattoos were some kind of seal that unlocked new powers. How is these are marks or a type of spell? Then does it mean that one of these marks has been released because of what happened today? Well, even our boy himself didn't sure. Anyway, Eugene was ready to bounce and told Miran to take care of the forest for him. She was shocked he wanted to leave so soon, especially since she finally had someone to talk to. Miran chased after him, whining about being bored and how nobody else could see spirits like her. She begged him to stay and help clean up the swamp, which she said would take ages. She even tried to bribe him by offering some fairy water, saying it tasted awesome. But her way of making the water, she just spit it out of her mouth and told him to give it a try. Our MC looked at her like she was crazy and told her to back off. But Miran wasn't giving up. She kept following him, promising to make more water for him in all sorts of weird ways, bro, calling him Mr. Nightwalker, and trying to get him to stay. A few days passed. Night fell on the village of Broadwin. Suddenly, there was panic. Someone ran to the chief, yelling that the red-eyed monster was back. The villagers gathered, all freaked out, expecting something bad. But when they checked outside, all they found was a huge pile of animals, like the ultimate barbecue delivery. People stood there, mouths wide open, wondering if they could really just take all that meat. They were confused because this red-eyed monster usually brought them food, which is dead animals every 2 weeks, but it wasn't that time yet. Still, the monster, our MC, had lived near the mountain for the last 10 years, never really causing trouble. The village chief couldn't figure out what Eugene was thinking, but when our boy asked to come into the village for a bit, the chief nervously agreed. Back when our boy first showed up a decade ago, everyone was terrified. But now, since he always paid taxes in meat, they mostly just ignored him. So, Eugene walked in, and when he showed his face, everyone was shocked. Our protagonist gave them a calm smile and said that, after being sick and alone for so long, he was finally all better. He'd come to thank the village for helping him out. And he told them not to be shy if they ever needed help. He even promised to come if they were ever in trouble. Our boy left with a charming smile, and the whole village just stared, totally lost for words, but their heads are full of questions about our Mac. Man, they really didn't know what to think about our boy now. So, the rumors about our MC started spreading in the village. People were whispering that maybe that monster in the woods was actually a half-elf or some exiled noble, because bro, after seeing his face, they just couldn't believe someone that good-looking could be a scary beast. I mean, the guy always wore a mask, so no one expected a handsome dude under there. On the way back to the forest, Miran the fairy was flying around Eugene, looking super confused. She wanted to know what was up with him giving away all those animal spoils to the villagers, and what kind of plan he was cooking. Our boy just kept walking, telling her that, sure, vampires had a bad rep for blood and killing, but in the human world, showing your real face was a big deal. Like, if you wanted people to trust you, you had to take off the mask sometimes. But Miran wasn't buying it. She asked if he was trying to make friends or something, instead of eating these humans. She reminded him that he said he'd be leaving soon anyway, so why bother getting involved with the people here? Sounded pointless to her. That's when our MC stopped walking and got serious for a second. He admitted to himself that maybe he was wrong about having nothing to do with this place. Our protagonist realized he couldn't just sit back and watch what was about to come. Miran had no clue what he meant, until Eugene dropped a bomb on her. He told her there was a disaster coming. He said mercenaries would soon attack, wipe out the whole village, and kidnap one specific boy for this lord called Sir Terwin. To keep things quiet, those mercenaries would kill everyone, and that would just drag holy knights right to Eugene's doorstep. So, yeah, he had to stop that mess before it started. Miran freaked out. She didn't believe mercenaries would go that far, and honestly, she just couldn't figure Eugene out, even after spending days with him. And how does he know that tragedy would happen? The guy was a mystery to her. Eugene told her that soon enough, she'd see if he was lying or not. Our boy explained that his first move was to win the village's trust, to prove he wasn't dangerous. Miran just blinked, still confused about what winning trust had to do with stopping those killers. Suddenly, Eugene stopped so fast that Miran crashed right into his back, complaining about her nose. But our hero was staring straight ahead. There was a group of armed dudes in their way. The mercenaries glanced at our boy and figured he was just some villager because of his chill clothes. They mumbled to each other, confused, since their plan to sneak up on the village was about to get ruined. One of them even pointed out that Eugene was way too handsome to be normal. But whatever, they decided they'd just get rid of him quick because he was alone and didn't look like he carried any real weapon. They really didn't want anyone running back to sound the alarm. Out of nowhere, one mercenary tried to sneak up from behind, swinging a giant axe right at Eugene's head. Miran screamed, telling our MC to look out, but our guy was already ready for action. His red eyes flashed in the dusk, and he moved so fast you'd miss it if you blinked. Blood splashed as he cut down his attacker, and just like that, the bloody business started. While he was fighting, our boy remembered telling Miran how important it was to get the villagers to trust him, even if it meant getting his hands dirty. Miran just stared at the mess, totally stunned that Eugene could drop someone with a single hit. Standing there, blood all over his face and clothes, our MC decided right then and there, none of these mercenaries were walking out alive. The mercenaries totally lost it. One screamed that Eugene wasn't human, he was a vampire. But another tried to get the others to calm down, saying this was actually good, since the church would pay big money for a live vampire. He charged our MC with a massive sword, but his jaw dropped when Eugene just caught the blade with his bare hand, squeezing it with insane strength. Eugene dodged the next defenses and dealt a brutal blow, finishing the guy instantly. Now the mercenaries realized they weren't facing some weak vampire. They figured they might as well try to kill him and take the body. They all piled on, swinging their weapons, one even aiming for Eugene's head. But he was like a shadow in the night, moving between them, shredding bodies left and right. One panicked and called Eugene a demon. Another yelled at his buddies not to rush the monster recklessly. Then, a massive bald guy came forward, swinging a spiked mace and threatening to smash Eugene into paste. Our boy just blocked the hit with his hand, making the dude's eyes go wide with shock. The sun started to set, and Eugene felt his power growing even stronger. He snapped the guy's weapon, then crushed him with one strike, letting everyone know the night belonged to him. Now, with corpses everywhere, Eugene thought it was the perfect time to hide the blood and cover his tracks. The rest of the mercenaries were totally broken, screaming like kids in a haunted house, calling for everyone to attack together because the monster was way too much for one-on-one. Not long after, the villagers showed up, carrying torches and looking like they'd just seen a ghost. The chief stared at the bodies, completely speechless, and wanted to know how in the world something like this could happen. One guy puked right on the spot, while the chief looked at our MC and asked, all suspicious, if he did this brutal massacre. Eugene just shrugged and played it cool. He told them he found the mess while coming back from checking some traps. Then he pointed out the real culprits, not the mercenaries but some black wolves lying among the bodies. The villagers gasped. Our boy made up a whole story about how the wolves attacked the mercenaries while he was away, and he just killed a few while the rest ran off, probably still watching them now. The chief was amazed, since those black wolves were known to be super dangerous, and Eugene made it seem like no big deal. One villager checked the bodies and confirmed there were wolf claw marks, so for now, it looked like Eugene was in the clear. Another guy agreed, pointing out that all the dead really were attacked by wolves. Yeah, our MC may be a vampire, but he sure knows how to play the game. The chief looked embarrassed and apologized for doubting our hero. Eugene said he totally understood and accepted the apology without any fuss. Then our MC asked what the plan was for the bodies, since he couldn't just leave them like that. The chief made the call. They would bury the dead right there in the village. While all this was going on, the tiny Miran was whispering her hot takes, saying our boy was a total liar with every word he spoke. Yeah, she was right. Wolves didn't actually do the killing. What really happened was wild. After Eugene finished off those mercenaries, a pack of wolves showed up, probably looking for an easy meal. Our MC took them out too, and then things got even crazier. He grabbed a wolf's jaw and used it to make bite marks and claw wounds all over the mercenaries' bodies. Talk about next-level cover-up, bro. With all these fake wolf wounds, his story looked super real. Now, Miran wondered why our boy cared so much about his image among the villagers. Hiding his crimes was smart, but he could have pieced out, leaving everyone confused. Still, he stuck around and acted all friendly. The tiny fairy could tell the guy had some bigger plan cooking in his head. Then our MC approached the chief with a serious look. He said he'd search the mercenaries' bodies, hoping to find something to give back to their families, but instead he found a sealed letter. He handed the letter to him and asked him to check it out. The chief took it with shaky hands, and the second he saw the seal, his face changed. Yup, he recognized it as Lord Terwin's seal, the big boss of the whole region. So, without waiting any longer, the chief started to read, and his eyes nearly popped out of his head. He could barely believe what he saw, so he asked in a rough voice if this was really true. Suddenly, he turned to the villagers and shouted, searching for someone named Felid. One of the villagers asked what the letter contained, and another one called out that Felid was chilling in the village. And sure enough, the kid was sitting in a house, eating his food, not a care in the world. Turns out, the letter spilled a crazy secret. Felid might actually be Lord Terwin's illegitimate son. The chief blinked in shock, realizing the mercenaries were not just here to steal or cause random trouble. They were on a secret mission to grab this kid, and now he was stunned to learn they'd had some noble blood living with them the whole time. That was a plot twist, for real. But then, the story jumped back to the battlefield from just a bit earlier. The mercenary captain was shaking in his boots, watching Eugene destroy his men like it was nothing. Our vampire hero moved so fast that nobody could react, and he ripped through the mercenaries with one hand like they were paper dolls. The mercenaries saw there was no way out. Trying to run would just get them killed even faster. One guy tried to pump everyone up, saying they should fight instead of standing there scared, because the monster in front of them only had 2 arms and 2 legs, as that would help. So, they all charged at him together. Meanwhile, the captain, who was already hurt and scared out of his mind, realized he couldn't even escape. He cursed his horrible luck for running into this monster right now. Still, he tried to sneak up on Eugene from behind, but our boy just spun around and kicked him so hard that his armor basically exploded, sending him flying into a tree. The guy coughed up blood and crashed to the ground, not looking too good. Just then, the captain started crawling through the mess of bodies, begging our MC to stop the killing. He was almost crying, asking if our MC had been waiting for them from the very start and wondering why he targeted them. Our enemies tried to talk his way out of it, saying they were just doing their job. But our MC cut him off with a chilling look, eyes glowing like a real demon, and demanded to know what kind of job this was. Then he made it super clear. This village was his now. Hearing that, the captain freaked out even more, promising he didn't know this was Eugene's territory, and said he wasn't there to hunt vampires or anything like that. He finally spilled the beans. The real target was that Terwin family's secret son hiding in the village, and people thought the kid was missing while he was actually living here under a different name. Their mission was just to find him. Eugene did not believe them, saying there was no reason to bring so many mercenaries for a simple search. He pressed for the truth. Were they planning to wipe out the entire village? The captain denied it at first, but then admitted that he was kind of right. He confessed they weren't hired by Lord Tyrwin himself, but by 2 other family members, Kamara Tyrwin and Verthel Tyrwin. He assumed they were hired due to political problems among the nobles. Then, our MC pieced things together fast. This was some high-level noble drama. The captain explained they brought so many men just in case something went wrong with the kidnapping, and begged for forgiveness. But when the name Verthel Tyrwin came up, our MC felt like he got punched in the face. He knew that dude, a total nightmare, the leader of the vampire hunters, and the guy who chased him with the Holy Knight, Jung Dirt. But then he realized something huge. Verthel wasn't the type to order a village massacre because he's a knight. So, the real decision to kill everyone was made by the mercenaries, just to cover up their crime. That's why, in his first life, the Holy Knights found him. It wasn't his own screw-up, but the fact that an entire village disappeared, making it impossible to hide. Until now, the captain kept begging, saying he just saw it as a way to make money and would never have tried anything if he knew Eugene was around. Our MC looked down at him, ice cold, and told him to leave, just to watch out for wolves along the way. He couldn't believe his luck, thinking he'd actually get to live. He started thanking our boy, but before he could finish, Eugene sent his head flying with a flash, one move, and it was all over. Yeah, our boy wasn't taking any chances. Meanwhile, the tiny fairy just stared at our boy like he was insane for killing that guy so fast. But our MC didn't care about her shock at all. He just said the mercenary knew his big secret, that he was a vampire, and, honestly, he couldn't let anyone live who knew that kind of stuff. Then, with a look so cold it could freeze water, he pointed out how the hungry wolves would love a free meal, so it was time to serve up dinner. After that, our MC went back to the villagers and started spinning his wild story again. He told the chief that those dead mercenaries were just guards sent to take Felid to the castle. Now, the villagers totally freaked out. They remembered that the kid showed up at their village 8 years ago, and his mom died last year. Suddenly everyone was scared, thinking the guards who were supposed to protect the poor kid were all dead. Seeing everyone panicking, Eugene stepped in and offered to help. He said he could take the kid to the city himself and protect him all the way, since he had so much experience surviving in the forest and dodging monsters. The chief looked pretty nervous about that, saying he couldn't ask such a huge favor from someone who used to be a total stranger and, honestly, kinda scary. But our MC just grinned and said a real knight never missed a chance to help out. Hearing that, our tiny fairy, Miran, hiding nearby, made fun of him for that fake, serious face and how he could lie so smoothly. Hearing the word knight, everybody was looking around, super confused. Miran was like, what the hell was he talking about? She was so shocked by anything that came up from our boy's mouth because it was always unexpected. Then, with zero shame, our boy stood up straight and said he was Jan Eugene, from the noble Eugene family, and apologized for not introducing himself sooner. Miran could barely believe this crazy act. She whispered that he was really out here pretending to be a noble and said that people couldn't trust him. But you know what? In 1 second, the whole power in the village flipped. The villagers started blaming each other for being rude to Sir Eugene, who was suddenly not a monster, but a knight. The tiny fairy whispered that he was going way too far with this lie, but our boy just gave her a sneaky smile. He told her it was easy to trick people here, because none of these simple villagers had ever seen a real noble before. It can seem through their reaction earlier when the whole village is in an uproar over the fact that the kid, Felid, who was hiding away in a mountain village, turned out to be a noble. So, as long as he acted the part, nobody could call him out. Back to the story, the villagers crowded around and started coming up with all kinds of stories to explain why he'd been living alone in the woods for more than 10 years. Some said maybe it was crazy night training, others guessed he was healing from a tough battle. Our MC rolled with it, saying he had to cut ties with people for special reasons. Now, everyone thought his wild hunting skills came from being a knight. It turns out, the chief felt super sorry for not being able to give him a reward fit for a noble. But our boy acted all humble, saying he just wanted a place to rest for the night. That made the chief really happy. Hosting a night was a big deal, even in his tiny house. So, in the next morning, after our MC spending a night in the village, he looked out the window, deep in the forest. He checked his hand, which had been exposed to the sun, and the skin turned into hard, black scales. Our boy called up that this new power he stole from the forest lord. He realized that if he covered himself with these black scales, the sunlight would hardly bother him anymore. That was a big plus for a vampire, bro. Suddenly, out of nowhere, our tiny fairy popped up again to roast him, saying he was a fake vampire and a fake knight, and couldn't even read. She was really having fun dragging him, but our MC ignored her, saying he'd be gone soon, and told her to keep talking smoothly, in the proper way to help his act. She asks our boy why he's suddenly making friends in this village and even taking on their requests. Meanwhile, this time he just lived quietly in the forest all the time. And after that, the villagers showed up and said they were ready, and he could depart whenever he liked. Eugene, acting like a total boss, pointed at them for Miran to see, bragging about how he earned all this respect overnight. Now our boy got his pride up, bro. He explained to her that humans trust anyone with authority way more than just some sweet words. If you have status, you barely have to lie at all, and people will buy what you say. But he was smart enough to know this only worked here, in a tiny, clueless village. Real nobles wouldn't be so easy to fool. So, our MC decided to make his lies into reality, and he has built up trust through his good deeds so far. Now, in that place, the chief handed a letter to Eugene, which contained a statement of explanation so the palace would not misunderstand his arrival. Seeing this, our MC thought that if he added some real skills to his act, everyone would believe him even more. How about Felid? He introduced himself to him, looking excited for the trip. That made our boy realize he needed real status, and fast, if he wanted to keep this up. Of course, he introduced himself again as John Eugene, noble of the Eugene family with a lot of pride. Without waiting any longer, the two of them set out for the city, with our MC planning to use the kid to climb higher in society for real this time. After a while, they reached the edge of Brahms's village, where the wooden sign proved their info was spot on. Eugene asked the kid if he knew how to read, and the boy said yes. His mom taught him before she died. His mom was just a regular woman but learned to read and write from someone she loved, which he now realized was Lord Tyrwin. Looking this situation, Miran thought this was the perfect moment for Eugene to get the kid to teach him letters. Then our boy asks Felid if he can teach him letter. The kid was super confused that a knight couldn't read or write. Eugene tried to save himself by saying the knight thing was just a cover. His family had actually fallen from power, so he lived by the sword, not the pen. Yeah, man, our MC totally bought the sad story, and he told himself that once people trust you, it's like you can get away with anything. Miran made fun of his perfect acting, warning that too many lies might catch up to him, but Felid's eyes said he believed everything. No questions asked. The boy even apologized for suspecting Eugene in the past, saying he'd been blinded by the village's rumors. Now, he wanted to judge him by what he saw himself, not by what others said. He even offered to secretly teach him to read so he wouldn't be embarrassed in front of anyone else. Man, our hero really had everybody wrapped around his little finger now. Anyway, now Felid was walking with our hero and got all curious, asking if he could hear more about Eugene's past. But bro, before our MC could even think up a new lie, an arrow shot right by Felid's face. But thank God our boy catch the arrow and save him. The poor kid screamed and fell over, totally losing it. Suddenly, the one who did that, coming into their way, a bunch of bandits came out from the trees. One started teasing his buddy for screwing up the shot, calling him a clown for missing. Felid was shaking like a leaf, whispering if these guys were thieves. The bandits took one look at our MC and the kid, then decided this would be easy money. They told the two to drop their bags and empty their pockets, threatening to kill them if they didn't hurry up. But our MC, he just whipped out his sword faster than anyone could blink. Then, like it was nothing, he dashed forward and chopped the leader's head clean off. Talk about a quick exit. Felid stared at the whole thing like he was watching some nightmare he couldn't believe. Another bandit screamed for his boss, but, bro, their leader was already taking a dirt nap. Eugene moved around the fight like he was dancing, and man, he was loving every second. Some dude came at him swinging an axe and yelling trash, but he just zipped past him, took his head off too, and kept going. Blood was flying everywhere, and the rest of the thieves started begging for help while they watched their friends drop like flies. Our boy didn't slow down. He stabbed one straight in the chest, then slashed another in the neck. All the while, he was thinking how humans always tried to crush anyone weaker than them, as if that was just normal. While he was stabbing one guy in the throat, he started wondering if people really thought someone who looked weak deserved to be hurt. Dude was cold as ice. While the guy was dying, Eugene called out to Felid and asked if learning to read would help him understand why people could be so cruel. He just stared, eyes wide, remembering his promise to judge by what he actually saw. Our boy told him that he was free to believe whatever he wanted, but he promised that not a single drop of blood would touch the kid. After the tense incident was over, they continued their journey and finally, they made it to the city market, which was packed with people yelling about their stuff for sale. Vendors were shouting, trying to get buyers, and Miran was zooming around the crowd, looking super excited. Felid warned our MC to be careful. He said, "Merchants here ripped off strangers all the time, and the chief back in their village always got scammed, and the proof just on their face right now. They saw a customer fighting with a seller, demanding his money back because the store next door was selling the same thing for half the price." But Eugene realized he needed cash fast before worrying about all that. So, he told Felid to wait and went into a shop. He pulled out a big stack of black wolf skins and asked the merchant how much he'd pay. The merchant freaked out a little. These skins were rare. But he checked out our MC's scruffy clothes and figured he was just some dumb wanderer, easy to scam. He tried to lowball our boy with a price of only 18 silver, lying that the skins were damaged. Meanwhile, Eugene just looked at the guy with those scary red vampire eyes. The merchant started sweating so hard that he almost slipped. He quickly changed his tune, saying the skins were rare and he'd raise the price a bit. Our boy didn't blink, just stepped closer. The merchant was shaking now, wishing him would just complain with words instead of those killer eyes. The merchant laughed nervously and bumped the price up to 23 silver. The RMC made a little noise, make him panicked, and raising it again to 25, then 27, then 28. He was basically begging our boy to just take the money and go. Felid was watching like, what the hell is happening right now? Eugene leaned in with a louder voice, and the dude finally cracked, asking how much this monster wanted. In the end, our boy got the full 30 silver, which was as high as the merchant could go. That's what I call pressure, bro. After scoring all that cash, Eugene bought himself some nice new clothes, and they continued their journey. After night began to fall, they rested in the forest, lit a campfire, and relaxed while thinking about what had happened at the market earlier. Then our MC spotted a sign with a bunch of letters, but even after Felid's lessons, they just looked like worms crawling around. How about Miran? She checked out our MC's new look and said the clothes weren't bad, definitely worth the money. Eugene joked that the merchant was a generous guy, considering it was his first time doing business. She laughed, saying the merchant was just a pushover, not some saint. Her eyes got all sparkly when she saw the silver, and she started whining that he should have pushed for even fancier silk. He missed a jackpot, in her opinion. But our boy just shrugged, saying he only needed clothes that covered him enough to keep out the sunlight. Miran roasted him for living like a grandma hiding in the attic, saying he should try to enjoy life for once. She started talking about how noble vampires lived the dream, big castles, silk clothes, drinking blood like wine, and told him he needed bigger goals if he wanted to really make it in this world. Our MC was surprised she knew so much, since she used to live in a swamp. Then she reminded him, she was from the spirit world originally, and everyone there traded stories from the human realm. She told him he'd have to learn the imperial language and ancient runes eventually, because, unless he got killed, he'd have to survive at least 200 years, so he must learn a bit of everything. Eugene suddenly asked if she could read. She said with total honesty, nope, not even a little. When they had conversation, suddenly the kid came up, all nervous, and asked who the heck he was talking to, since he couldn't see anyone. Our MC played it cool and said he was just talking to himself, quickly changing the subject to Felid's stomach, since the kid had thrown up earlier. Then, Felid apologized, saying that when he saw him skinning a rabbit for dinner, it brought back gross memories from that bloody fight with the bandits. Miran said the kid had it rough, but our MC told him not to worry, since most normal people never got used to seeing dead bodies. But, after that, Felid perked up and said he still had energy, and since the night was long, he could teach Eugene a bit of writing, since they had spare paper. He seemed happy to be useful. The lesson started, and he was shocked by how fast our boy picked things up. Eugene asked if learning letters was supposed to be this easy, but Felid said he learned stuff that usually took months or even a year, but our boy just brushed it off, saying that was too much praise. Looks like our hero was stacking up skills and making friends. One crazy day at a time, isn't it? Okay, back to the story. Now our MC was deep in thought, wondering if just a little reading practice would be enough to help poor Felid, since the kid was about to wake up as a noble's son. The kid looked super nervous and admitted it all felt strange, like it wasn't even real. He said his mom never told him any details, so he hadn't really thought about it. He even confessed with a shaky smile that he didn't expect Sir Tyrwin to suddenly welcome him with open arms. Yeah, the tension was thick, bro. But before they could dig deeper into their feelings, a bunch of horsemen and tough-looking guys rolled out from the trees. The one up front had a friendly face and a light beard, acting all chill. He greeted them like old pals and explained that his group couldn't find a camping spot, so he politely asked if they could share this one. But our boy Eugene was not buying that friendly act so easily. He gave them a long, sharp look and noticed their gear was top-notch, with matching armor and weapons. These dudes moved with discipline, not like those joke bandits from before. He instantly realized these were the real deal, actual mercenaries. While their leader was scouting the group, he noticed Felid and asked where they were headed. Eugene's mind was racing, since the guy sounded like a proper professional, and one dumb lie could get them in trouble fast. So, he just told him the truth. He explained they were on their way to Lord Tyrwin's castle. The leader grinned widely and said his group was going to the same place. He offered to share some food and drinks if they could settle down together. Pretty generous. But the story got spicy quick, because suddenly, a young blonde soldier named Raban jumped in, acting really rude. He complained loudly about sharing the spot with strangers, not hiding his attitude at all. The captain quickly apologized to Eugene, saying Raban was new to their squad and didn't know when to shut up yet, so he hoped they'd forgive the rookie's slip-up. Then after that, the captain introduced himself as a Partek, and our MC replied with cold confidence, calling himself Knight Jan Eugene. The rookie just couldn't let it go. He repeated the word knight in the most sarcastic way, basically laughing in Eugene's face. He started mocking him, asking what made him look like a knight. Where was his horse? Where was his armor? The guy even got all up in Eugene's face, poking him in the chest and telling him to admit he was a fake. He acted like a little gremlin, saying he never heard of any noble family called Eugene and accusing him of being a fraud. Our boy just stared him down with those cold red vampire eyes. He knew he'd already told Felid he was a knight, so there was no backing out now. He figured out fast that these mercenaries had their own reasons for coming close, and honestly, they probably didn't care that much if he was a real knight or not. But if he showed weakness, he'd be toast. Quietly, he gripped his sword under his cloak, ready to wipe the whole squad if things got ugly. The air went ice cold. Partek, the leader, saw the danger right away. He called out to Raban, but he didn't get a chance to act tough, and he had no other choice to save his mercenaries. So, in a flash, he threw a brutal punch straight at his face. The kid went flying and crashed to the ground, totally wiped out. The leader does not care. He rushed to apologize to Eugene again, acting super polite and begging him to forgive that rookie's disrespect. Eugene accepted the apology with pure coldness, telling the mercenaries to stick to their places and behave. Partek thanked him for being so chill and patient, and he fell silent, thinking that this was just the beginning. People would keep doubting him, so if he wanted to avoid trouble, he'd have to act like a real knight and prove it soon. Later that night, Partek sat next to Raban, who woke up groggy and confused about why he'd been hit so hard. The leader let him have it, calling him an idiot and yelling that he nearly got them all killed. Partek asked how he could be so clueless as to pick a fight with a knight. Did he have a death wish or something? He even knocked that rookie on the head again, telling him straight up that he'd just saved his life, because if things had gone differently, they'd all be dead now thanks to his big mouth. But the rookie still tried to play it cool, saying our MC was just a shabby guy with a short sword, but Partek was not having it. He accused him of being so short-sighted that he couldn't see 2 steps ahead. Then the leader schooled him hard. He asked the rookie if he had any clue how expensive Eugene's cloak was. Turns out, it was made from real lyanthrop leather, and even the cheapest kind cost more than 10 silver coins. Raban looked like he'd seen a ghost when he realized that the cloak was worth 3 months' pay for him. The leader kept going. He pointed out that our MC had been reading a letter, which meant the guy could read and write. No way he was some nobody. Then he dropped the scariest truth. Eugene had been about to draw his sword, and if that happened, they'd all be dead except maybe one lucky survivor. While Raban was running his mouth, he was basically surrounded by death and had no idea. The leader explained the details like a true pro. He noticed Eugene's right hand was hiding under his cloak, gripping the sword, and his left foot had shifted back a little. That was a stance only taken by someone who knew how to fight for real, someone who could slice with insane precision, and if he'd waited even a second longer before stopping Raban, his head would have been rolling. But Raban tried to act tough again, stammering that Partek could have blocked the attack, and the captain just looked at him dead serious and told him he had no idea how terrifying real knights were. Knights. he said, started swinging wooden swords as babies and spent their whole lives learning how to kill. They went into monster-filled dungeons and never blinked, carving their reputations out of blood and battle. Only the ones who survived all that horror even got close to being called knights. So yeah, our hero wasn't just some wanderer, he was the real deal, and now everybody knew not to mess with him. It's kinda cool, right? Alright, time for some real talk, bro. The captain started dropping some serious wisdom on his rookie squad about our hero. He explained that pretending to be a knight was actually a huge crime, and if Eugene was a fake, that was bad news for everyone, because only some crazy person would pull a stunt like that. He said there was no way anybody would claim to be a knight unless he was ready to risk his neck and trust his sword, and the fact that our MC could say it so confidently at his age meant one thing: the dude had to be insanely strong. Raybon, the rookie, was sweating buckets now and asked if that meant our MC was actually stronger than even the captain. The boss admitted softly that, yeah, it sure seemed that way. He finished by pointing out that Eugene had said he was heading to Lord Terwin's castle too, probably because of some new dungeon everybody was talking about. Since they were going in the same direction, he guessed they would definitely run into Eugene again. Meanwhile, from the shadows, Eugene was just watching them with that classic sly vampire vibe, eyes glinting in the dark. You could almost hear him thinking, because our protagonist started to realize something big. This whole knight thing was way more powerful than he expected. Just calling himself a knight earned him instant respect everywhere, which fit his plans perfectly. But at the same time, he knew he needed to step up his game and really learn how to play the role. So, he started analyzing the situation like a pro. He noticed that, except for the rookie who got knocked down, these mercenaries were actually pretty skilled, way better than those losers he dealt with before. This got our boy thinking, why did the Terwin family hire those scummy bandits to do their dirty work before, when they clearly had the money to hire real professionals like these guys? And why didn't they just use their own soldiers? Something was off, bro, and the whole thing smelled pretty suspicious. Just then, the mercenaries spotted Eugene walking over to them. The rookie boy, still nervous, asked why he was coming closer. Our MC walked up, dropped his mask, and flashed a charming grin. He said he heard they were all heading to Lord Terwin's castle, and with a smooth, friendly tone, he suggested they travel together since they were all going the same way. Raban just froze, totally stunned by how handsome our protagonist looked with that big bright smile, and the guy couldn't help but agree, stammering out how good-looking he was. Even the leader just stared at him like he'd lost his mind. After the night is over, they continued the journey together. Soon, the whole squad moved on and reached Martila, a busy village in the Terwin territory where the streets were packed with people. Eugene walked through the crowd with his face covered, feeling a bit relieved. The mercenaries totally bought his story and really believed he was a knight, which gave him the perfect chance to dig up some good info during their travels. That's when Miran, the tiny fairy, popped up out of nowhere, flying circles around our MC and calling him Lord Eugene all cheerful-like. She told him she followed his orders and listened to the mercenaries talking. Eugene got serious, asking if she picked up anything useful, and she was happy to spill all the tea. She said Lord Terwin was in terrible shape and could die any moment, maybe even tomorrow. And then she dropped the big news. A brand new dungeon was found on his land, and rumors said whoever conquered it would get rich quick. But the Terwin family was too broke and understaffed to handle it. Hearing that, Eugene started thinking about that dungeon, but the tiny fairy brought up something more personal. What was going to happen to poor Felid if Lord Terwin kicked the bucket? She worried the boy would end up an orphan again the second he arrived. But our MC just cut her off coldly, saying it wasn't his business. She was not happy about that, yelling at him for being so heartless and demanding to know what they were supposed to do now. She pointed out that in all the chaos, Felid's own brothers might just murder him like a stray dog. While the crowd bustled around them, our MC watched Felid in silence, his mind working overtime. He figured out why Lord Terwin was calling his illegitimate son now, probably just wanted to see his kid before dying. He thought to himself that both his fate and Felid's fate were about to get flipped upside down, one way or another. After that, the group finally arrived at Rose Castle, Lord Terwin's huge, fancy residence. Eugene checked it out, thinking it was way bigger than he expected, while Miran buzzed in delight, telling him to rise up the ranks quickly so they could live in a mansion too. He shut her down fast, telling her to stop dreaming and just come inside. Meanwhile, the kid, Felid, looked surprised at Eugene's attitude as they walked up. Right then, a guard stepped in front of them and demanded to know who they were and why they had come. Partek jumped in, looking cool, and introduced his squad as mercenaries hired by the Palin Company. The guard wanted to know about Eugene and the others. But before anyone could answer, a blond guy with a cocky attitude strolled up. He introduced himself as Kamara, the oldest son and heir of the Terwin family, and asked coldly if the carriage behind them was their delivery. Partek confirmed the goods were well delivered, so he just barked at them to quit standing around and start unloading. Then, Kamara noticed Eugene standing off to the side and demanded to know who he was and why he wasn't working like the others. Then he stepped forward, cool as ever, and said he was Knight Jan Eugene. He pointed to Felid and explained that the kid was with him. That's when a serious voice cut through the noise, calling Kamara Big Brother and asking what he thought he was doing. Eugene grumbled to himself that he knew that voice all too well, and you could see Kamara was annoyed. A knight in a red cloak and shining armor stepped up, scolding the air and reminding him for the millionth time that checking strangers was his job as castle guard. As our boy stared at this guy, his face went stone cold behind the mask. He told himself he could never forget that voice. Right away, he remembered the worst moment from his past. The general director of the vampire hunting unit, the one who first found him when he was in hiding. Yeah, our boy was in for a real rough reunion, and the things just got super tense for our boy. The moment he saw who was standing there in that flashy red cloak, he nearly relived his worst nightmares. That guy? Verthel Tyrwin, the second son of the Tyrwin family, and the very same knight who used to hunt him down with Jung Dirt. Yeah, talk about bad memories. Verthel Tyrwin looked all serious and official, asking his big brother what the hell he was doing outside like this. Kamara, the older brother, glared back at Verthel with a face full of sarcasm, basically asking if he had to fill out a report for every little thing he did. He even threw some shade, hinting that Verthel acted like he was the real family heir. Then, his brother's face twisted in annoyance, saying that definitely wasn't what he meant. But our MC was so over their family drama. Without waiting another second, he pulled out a letter and said it was from Chief Jeb of Broadwin Village. Verthel's hand shot out to grab it, his eyes wide in surprise at the mention of Broadwin. But our MC wasn't having it. He yanked the letter away and handed it straight to Kamara, all while fixing Verthel with a cold stare. Kamara's face changed fast as he read the letter. His eyes went huge. Apparently, the letter said the mercenaries got wiped out in a wolf attack, and the boy with Eugene was actually the family's illegitimate son. Meanwhile, Felid almost tripped stepping forward, so scared his legs were shaking, but he introduced himself anyway. The air instantly swapped to this fake big brother smile, welcoming him like he'd always wanted another sibling, and even said that his father missed him so much. Meanwhile, Verthel just stared at the kid with a look that could freeze water. Then he barked at the servants in a really rude way, ordering them to clean Felid up and get him some decent clothes. Poor Felid looked back at our MC, clearly freaked out. Just when everyone thought things were wrapping up, our protagonist jumped in, making the whole room stop. Eugene announced that they needed to talk about his reward, and he was not leaving until he met Lord Tyrwin himself. That left Verthel straight up shocked for a second. Then his eyes flashed with anger, and he snapped that it was totally impossible. He explained, all sharp and mean, that their father was really sick, so visitors were out of the question. He tried to pay him off in gold to get him to leave. But our protagonist just stared at them with those red vampire eyes, thinking about all the trouble he went through to bring Felid here. Verthel wasn't backing down and made it very clear he didn't want to repeat himself. Kamara, smelling the drama, jumped in and asked why it was such a big deal. That made his brother go off, yelling right back at him. It was obvious these brothers hated each other's guts. Kamara said they had to introduce their new brother to their father anyway, but Verthel argued there was no way since their dad couldn't even stay awake for an hour, and he wasn't about to let some stranger anywhere near him. The shouting kept going, with both of them accusing each other of messing with Lord Tyrwin's schedule and twisting words. Finally, Kamara turned to our boy with this fake, sorry look, blaming his brother for making things hard. He called our MC Sir Eugene, and it makes her brother question the pronoun he used. He put a hand on his shoulder, acting all friendly, and told him to just go home for now. Then he turned to Felid, saying he'd show him around the castle personally. The kid just followed, looking helpless. Meanwhile, Eugene watched the scene with a killer stare, totally realizing that these guys never planned to let him near Lord Tyrwin in the first place. Right then, a huge crash shook the ground and a massive shadow fell across Verthel. This giant red-haired beast of a man showed up, easily carrying a pile of unconscious men like they were bags of potatoes. He dropped them right in front of the group and greeted Verthel like it was just another day at the office. With a wild grin, this dude, Galfriedic, said he had been looking for them and explained he caught these mercenaries looting villagers instead of training like they were supposed to. He even suggested they should execute one of the mercenaries to set an example. The guy was totally nuts. But instead of giving response to the big boy, Verthel watched our boy closely, probably wondering what the knight would say. But then he shut down Galfredic's crazy idea, saying he'd deal with disciplining the mercenaries later and telling everyone they should get inside the castle to talk away from all the nosy eavesdroppers outside. The big boy just shrugged and agreed, like it was no big deal. While all this was going down, Partek, the mercenary leader, murmured the name of the big boy earlier. It makes Eugene ask if he knew who that monster of a man was. Then he told Eugene that the guy was none other than Knight Sir Galfredick, is a knight, a total legend who took third place in the Evergrow family's big tournament not long ago. The leader couldn't stop talking about how that big boy wiped the floor with over 1,000 competitors, calling his strength flat-out monstrous. Our MC had to admit, he was wondering why a powerhouse like that would bother coming to some far-off place. Then Partek explained that it was all because of the new dungeon that just popped up. The first knight to conquer a dungeon would get crazy fame, and maybe even a shot at joining a richer, more powerful family. It was risky. People died all the time doing it, but the reward was huge. The leader figured Galfredick wanted to use this as a stepping stone for his own big promotion. Hearing all this, Eugene just repeated the word knighthood under his breath, clearly thinking about his next move. Then, out of nowhere, he turned to Partek and reminded him that their contract was up that day. The leader nodded, and Eugene gave him a sly smile from under his mask, saying he had a new request he wanted to discuss. That night, inside the castle, Kamara was brooding hard while watching Verthel punish those mercenaries. He decided that he was the one who needed to open the dungeon, no one else. In his head was full of jealousy and paranoia about his brother, who was looking more and more like the real heir now that their father was weak. He realized Verthel was stacking the deck, bringing in strong knights like Galfredick, and making the right connections. He was sure that if his brother conquered the dungeon first, public opinion would swing to his side, and his shot at becoming the next lord would go up in smoke. Man, this family was a mess, and our boy Eugene was right in the middle of it. Back to the story. Kamara was sitting alone, looking totally lost. He kept thinking about how he was supposed to handle this big dungeon thing, but it wasn't like he could just grab any random losers for the job. He was really stressed about it. That's when his servant popped in and said Sir Eugene wanted to see him. He was pretty surprised, since he remembered that it was the same knight who brought Felid earlier. After thinking about it for a second, he told the servant to let our MC in. Then the door opened, and Eugene walked in with his usual calm, icy vibe. Kamara greeted him as Sir Eugene, trying to sound friendly. Then he jumped ahead, telling our MC not to worry about Felid. He promised that he was paying special attention to the boy's safety and even invited him to sit down. He said our boy could relax, because as soon as his father woke up, he'd get his reward. Then, he started talking about how grateful he was that Eugene handed the letter to him in front of Verthel. That move, he said, made it easier for him to act all proud in front of his rival brother. Our MC did not buy Kamara's behavior. He straightly said that he's only had business with the lord of this estate, but he was a bit surprised when a third party intervened. Hearing this, Kamara didn't waste any more time and asked him straight up, what was he here for? Was he trying to meet Lord Terwin to check on his health, or was there something else? Eugene said that was part of it, but he had a special offer for Kamara. And then, just like that, our hero dropped the big one. He looked right at Kamara and said he wanted to join the squad going into the dungeon. At first, the heir just lost it. He started laughing so hard it was almost disrespectful, like, was this guy for real? He even wiped tears from his eyes, saying Eugene was even funnier than he expected. He teased him, asking if he was even a real knight, and started poking fun at those rumors he heard that our boy was supposedly killed 5 bandits. He wondered if our MC just wanted to boost his own reputation as a knight, and he demanded to know why he should ever agree to this crazy request. But Eugene just grinned, totally confident, and promised that this offer was something that Kamara would never regret, especially with how things stood right now. He spelled out the deal. Only 100 silver coins for him and his whole group, and he'd only take half of the byproducts from the dungeon. No magic stones for him at all. Right then, the heir's face changed. He stopped laughing and got all serious, because this deal was so cheap it was kind of suspicious. Our MC saw that look and asked him coldly if he liked the offer or not, and dropped one bomb. He said he wasn't the one in a hurry here. Kamara was. Hearing that, the heir couldn't help staring at him, checking out his gear and thinking he looked like a wandering knight with no fancy family behind him. Most knights lived for honor, not money, so maybe this guy was actually acting out of pure chivalry. He started imagining Eugene as some awesome knight who cared about honor more than gold. The more he thought about it, the more he believed it. He figured this was a rare chance for him. While Kamara was still thinking of the opportunity, but our MC continued his offer. He reminded with that confident look that he wasn't desperate at all. Kamara was the one racing against the clock. That's when he realized Eugene was way smarter than most knights, not just brawn but brains too. His respect for him actually went up, since normal knights never played mind games like this. So, in the end, Kamara agreed. He said there was no reason to say no to a deal this good, and reached out for a handshake, saying he looked forward to working together. Eugene explained, all cool and businesslike, that the reason he didn't care about magic stones was that purifying them was a pain and super expensive, but everything else could be sold fast for full price, which made it better for him. He also remembered asking Partek, the mercenary boss, for a favor, to introduce him to a merchant guild he trusted to help sell the loot. Partek grinned back, totally on board. Now, Kamara shook his hand, pretty sure he'd just landed an awesome deal, and couldn't think of any reason to refuse. Then the story jumped to a different room, where Galfredik, that huge crazy knight, was sitting with Verthel. Verthel was rolling his eyes about the idea of adding new people to their squad at the last second, saying it was just ridiculous. The big boy, not even pretending to be friendly, waved his dagger around and announced that the dungeon was not some playground for kids. He made his creepy rule clear. In there, it was life or death, and if anyone slowed them down, they would just die right where they stood. He made it super clear he wouldn't accept any weaklings ruining things for the rest of them. Right then, Verthel replied with this cold, insulting tone, saying he wasn't expecting much since his first brother was the one who found this new knight. He figured his brother didn't have many noble friends and didn't know a lot of people, so he told Galfredik to just deal with the new guy if things went wrong. Even the knight looked surprised at that. At that moment, Kamara came into the room, apologizing for being late and saying he'd been talking with the new knight. With a big showy smile, he formally introduced Eugene as the latest member of the dungeon squad. Our boy walked in quietly behind him, bringing Partek and his mercenaries with him. Verthel stared at Eugene and his crew, remembering this was the same guy leading those scrappy mercenaries from before. He stepped up with a cold smile, saying that with all due respect, they couldn't accept someone whose background and skills were totally unknown. The heir pushed back with confidence, saying he would personally guarantee Eugene's abilities. Verthel and Galfredik looked super skeptical, but Kamara dropped his trump card. He reminded them about that nasty bandit group who'd been causing huge problems at the border for ages, and how nobody else had solved it. Then he told everyone that Sir Eugene here wiped out the whole group with just one short sword on his way to the castle. He asked if maybe that was finally enough to convince them, and just like that, our MC's legend grew a little more. Bro, this chapter kicked off fast, no warning at all. Out of nowhere, a dagger came flying at our MC, aiming straight for his head. But our boy, Eugene, he didn't flinch. He just smacked the blade away like it was nothing, sending it so hard into the wall that the thing stuck right in. That was wild, and everyone around just stared with their mouths open. Then who else showed up but Galfredik, looking way too happy about the whole thing. He said he wanted to apologize for being rude before, but honestly, you could hear the sarcasm dripping off every word. He even threw a little shade, saying Eugene's perfect skin and no tan made him look like a spoiled rich kid. The big boy got all up in our protagonist's face, his eyes basically screaming, "Let's see what you've got," and then asked if the young master minded showing off his skills for real. Right then, word hit the street in seconds. People were already running to the castle square, shouting that Galfredik was about to duel someone. The place filled up quickly. Everyone wanted to see this go down, because he was a legend who once took third place in the tournament, and the rumors about him? Dude was famous for tearing monsters apart with his bare hands. People even started to feel bad for Eugene, thinking he was about to get demolished by a monster in human skin. But you want to know what our hero did? He stood there like he was waiting for a bus, totally chill. Galfredik whipped out his giant sword, cocky as ever. Eugene just copied his pose, cool as ice. The referee rang the bells and shouted that the duel was starting. Galfredik didn't waste a second. He charged in, swinging like a madman. Swords clashed, sparks flew, and the air was full of the sound of metal smashing into metal. Eugene blocked him again and again, and every blow was so strong the ground practically shook. Meanwhile, the bog boy was grinning, like this was the best day of his life, taunting our boy to fight him for real. The mercenaries watching were freaking out. Some rookie thought Galfredik was actually losing, but Partek, their boss, explained that the big boy was just testing Eugene, not going all out yet. He was watching and learning. Eugene kept up the attack, thinking he had the upper hand, but Galfredik was just studying him the whole time. He noticed his style was all over the place. No school, no pattern, just raw, wild instinct. He figured out that our MC was no real knight, just some beast who'd learned to fight by surviving, not training. Galfredik threw a look at our boy, then called him out for lying about being a knight. He explained to everyone that Eugene's fighting was rough and brutal, not like a knight at all, just brute strength and no training. He said being a knight was more than just swinging a sword, but after a few swings, he'd seen enough to know the truth. Our MC just rolled with it. Instead of talking, he attacked harder, basically telling Galfredik he talked too much. The big boy laughed it off and told Eugene to shut him up if he could. Things got way more intense, blades clashed like thunder, and then Galfredik brought his sword down with insane force. Our MC tried to block, and the hit was so strong that the whole arena filled with a dust cloud. Right then, people started whispering if our MC had been knocked out cold. Verthel even started smiling, thinking the fight was over. But then, from inside that dust, one creepy red eye started glowing. Our boy came flying out, faster than lightning, and Galfredic barely blocked him. The big boy's face went from cocky to shocked. He realized Eugene was actually learning and getting better in real time. Right in the middle of the fight, they kept swinging at each other. Every hit faster and wilder, until finally their swords couldn't take it and shattered at the same time. Both of them tossed away the wrecked swords. They got up close, hands locked, faces almost touching, both refusing to look away. Galfredic actually laughed, amazed. He wondered how a guy so much smaller than him could hit like a monster. When he looked closer into Eugene's eyes, he had to admit it, even though he knew way more about fighting. Our MC's raw power was just insane, way more than his own. But the big boy wasn't the type to quit. He changed his stance, focusing hard, ready to use his experience. He lunged in with another huge swing, but Eugene just slipped away like it was nothing. Galfredic kept hammering at him, trying to smash him down, but our boy dodged every time. And then, in the chaos, our protagonist saw a gap and went for it. The big boy realized too late that this guy didn't move like a trained knight. He moved like someone who survived by adapting, thinking on his feet. Before the big boy could react, Eugene punched him right in the face, but the enemies could only wonder where this monster of a man even came from. And in that moment, he had to admit he lost that round. Our MC's punch sent Galfredic flying like a rag doll. The guy smashed into the back wall and left a giant mess, dust flying everywhere. The referee just about lost his voice, declaring that Knight Jan Eugene was the winner. Meanwhile, our boy Eugene stood there catching his breath, while the crowd lost their minds, whispering about how this unknown knight just destroyed Galfredic. Partek and the mercenary started laughing and bragging this beast was their boss. On the other side, the big boy was lying in the mess, stared up at the sky, looking like he was rethinking his life. Everyone held their breath, waiting to see what he'd do next. He got up slowly, eyes burning, and walked toward Eugene. Our MC tensed, ready for round 2, but then Galfredic just grabbed his hand and threw it up in the air, shouting for everyone to cheer for the winner. Seeing that, the crowd exploded, chanting John Eugene's name, and even our boy looked surprised by the crazy turn of events. Verthel, meanwhile, was in the corner, looking like he was about to explode from how pissed off he was. Yeah, our hero's legend just went up another level, and the haters could do nothing but watch. The next day, the whole castle changed its tune. Now everyone looked at him differently, like he was some hero. Kamara came in all smiles, calling him the amazing knight John Eugene, and asking if he slept well. He laughed in this fake, rich guy way, saying he noticed our boy did not want any of the fancy comforts or services he sent. Honestly, our MC was probably just glad nobody was forcing him to eat anymore, like last night when he was invited into the fancy dinner in the castle, while the servants gave him excessive service on the orders of Kamara. Back to the story. When they still had a small conversation, then boom, Raban burst in, made a respectful bow, and yelled at the top of his lungs, asking if our MC called for him. Eugene was so annoyed, but it wasn't over yet. Suddenly there was Galfredic, that big boy, who suddenly jumped into him, going for a hug and calling him his friend and comrade. He tried to push him away, cold as ice, telling him not to stick to him. The big boy kept laughing anyway, asking if they slept well, but complained that his face was still hurting from Eugene's punch, saying he could not sleep all night. He pointed at his totally bruised face and laughed even harder, asking our boy if he could see those marks. Our hero just thought this guy was begging for another beating. Galfredic blurted out that they should totally have another sparring match today because the weather was so nice. All the soldiers and mercenaries nearby started gathering, all hyped to watch them fight again, and Eugene felt stuck. He thought to himself that the big boy could not care less if he was a real knight or not, and that by now, everyone else had stopped being suspicious, which was exactly what our MC wanted. Still, he was not used to having this many people crowding around him. Then he remembered how people treated him last night after that match, when he was invited inside the castle to have dinner. So, just like that, inside the castle, our boy Eugene was sitting at this crazy, fancy dinner table. The servants stood around, telling him that Master Kamara gave super strict orders. He wanted him to eat well and rest up before opening the dungeon, so the poor guy was going to be watched during every meal like he was a little kid. One of the servants just stood there, waiting to hear if the lighting was good enough and what kind of wine our MC wanted. Meanwhile, now you had Miran, the little fairy, whispering in his ear and totally messing with him. She was teasing, saying stuff like, "Too bad they could not just tell the humans that vampires did not need food at all." She wondered, laughing, if he might get a stomachache if he ate all that fancy food. Honestly, our boy looked like he was trapped. So he decided he had to do something. Fast. He raised his hand, told the whole crowd to be quiet, and said firmly that he was only accepting the sentiment and told them he would handle his own food from now on. The servant was totally confused. Then Eugene continued his order to inform Kamara of this. Our boy couldn't help with this new situation. Considering that he has lived in the depths of the mountains for a dozen years, and now he has to face many people, of course, he still needs his own space. Yeah, our boy is a hardcore introvert, bro. Actually, this is a good step for his life. Even those who doubted him at first are one by one starting to trust him. It's the result he wanted, but even after several days, he hasn't gotten used to people swarming around him. Okay, let's get back to the present. Where Galfredic kept poking at him, our boy replied by saying that he really wanted to get hit again. The big boy just grinned and said they would never know who would win unless they tried again. Then, out of nowhere, Felid showed up. The poor kid looked like he had been through hell, his face full of fear and pain. He asked Eugene in a quiet, shaky voice if he had been okay all this time. Geez, the situation suddenly felt really cold, guys. Suddenly, the story flashed back to a super dark torture chamber. A man in ripped-up clothes was screaming for mercy, begging his master to forgive him. Standing over him was Verthel Tirwin, everyone. He was looking like a total psycho, cold and cruel. Verthel started yelling, blaming the guy for screwing everything up, saying that if he had just done his job right, then the red-eyed knight in the village would never have made it into Rose Castle. His eyes started glowing this freaky blue, and he said that if it was not for this loser, his plan would have gone perfectly. The bleeding guy on the ground tried to explain, shaking with fear, saying the mercenary group he had hired was supposed to be good, but they all got eaten by black wolves. Verthel just mocked him for not checking things himself before hiring anyone. Then, he grabbed the guy's face, nasty and rough, and asked if his eyes were just for decoration. The poor guy looked totally terrified, and our enemies, just being the psychos they were, decided that if the eyes were useless, he should just rip them out. The man started screaming and crying so hard as Verthel really did it, and he just stood there cool as ice, asking what he should do next to fix the mess. Our enemies realized he could not just kill someone who had already gotten inside the castle with everyone watching. Then, a super evil idea hit him. He looked at Felid, lying on the ground, and muttered that this would be the only way, plus it would get rid of the body for him, hinting that he was planning to have him killed inside the dungeon. Whoa, this part really hit us so hard, didn't it? Okay, back in the present, Felid was staring at Eugene, looking totally hopeless. He said he came here just to die, and wondered if they sent him to the dungeon to get rid of him. Our MC was not surprised. He told him to remember the mercenary attack on the village, then dropped the brutal truth. Those mercenaries were sent by one of his brothers. Our boy made it clear that they had never wanted him to reach the castle alive. The kid just went pale with fear. But Eugene was not done. With this sharp look in his eyes, he told the kid there was one way to survive the whole mess. He gave him a simple choice: become Eugene's squire. He explained that Felid was 16 now, so he did not need anyone's permission anymore and could pick his own destiny. He put it bluntly, either just sit there and wait for the knives to come, or get up and fight for his life. Then it was dungeon day. The whole squad was lined up in front of this massive, chained-up gate. No one really knew what monsters were waiting inside. The big boy, Galfredic, took the lead, explaining the plan. Because of the huge gate, he figured they would see low-level monsters like goblins and kobolds, and maybe medium ones like trolls and spiders. But if any big, dangerous monsters showed up, everyone had to bail out fast. He ordered the group to search the tunnels first. Way in the back, some porter guys were whispering to each other, relieved they were just porters and hoping not to get killed this time. One guy said he was planning to fake an injury and hide as soon as the weak monsters were gone, but his buddy told him he was an idiot, since these first raids were always chaos, and nobody cared about what happened in the back. He said there was no way he wanted to die like a stray dog for a handful of coins. The nervous porter said he would just run if things got bad, but before he could finish, bam! Someone behind him hit him hard. Yeah, things in this dungeon squad were about to get wild. So, out among the porters, Verthel Tirwin showed up with his usual psycho face, marching right up and scaring the crap out of everyone. He started demanding to know where that bastard Felid was, since he'd put the boy here on purpose. One of the porters, looking super confused, pointed out the kid, who was actually over with our boy Eugene, handing him a little bag of snacks and quietly asking him to please come back safe. He promised he would, acting all cool like it was no big deal. But Verthel just lost it. He rushed over, yelling that the kid was a sneaky little rat, and our MC was nothing but a ruthless barbarian. Then, he started screaming right in Felid's face, acting like the worst big brother ever, telling him he was wasting time and ordering him to grab his bag and move his butt to his post. No delays, no excuses. When the kid just froze and didn't even move, our enemies got even madder and went to grab the kid, saying he must have gone deaf or something. But before he could lay a finger on him, a strong hand shot out and stopped him cold. Yup, it was our hero, Eugene, holding Verthel's wrist in a grip that said, "Do not lay a finger on him." Our MC glared at Verthel from under his mask and threw out a sharp question, basically asking if he was out of his mind for sending a kid who never held anything more dangerous than a kitchen knife into a monster-filled dungeon. Bro, he straight up called him crazy. Our enemies yanked his hand away, super pissed, and started ranting that Eugene was being rude and that he just wanted to make his brother strong, like anyone was buying that. Trying to act like the big boss, he told our boy to know his place and claimed he had no right to boss Felid around, but our MC was not having it. He told the enemies off, ice cold, and dropped some big news. He said he was actually the one who didn't know his place. Then our boy announced, right in front of everyone, that Felid was officially his squire as of yesterday. Bro just made it public, so nobody could pretend they did not hear it. Right then, Verthel was stunned, totally caught off guard. Eugene raised his voice so everyone could hear, explaining that being a squire was a bond even stronger than family, and then he made it super clear that if Verthel even tried to hurt the kid, he'd be picking a fight with himself. Our boy leaned in, pure menace, and mocked our enemies, saying maybe they should have a little warm-up before going into the dungeon. That was basically a threat with a slap of sarcasm. Wow, now our MC's charisma is growing as bright as the sun, bro. Now, Verthel started stammering and stepped back, looking like he just realized who he was dealing with. He tried to protest, whining that no one gave Eugene permission to do this, and that adopting some bastard from another family could ruin the boy's whole future. But the crowd was already talking. Some of the warriors were whispering that the dungeon would be way safer with monsters like Eugene and Galfredic at the front, not just fake knights. One guy was still salty about the duel those two had, saying he would need to be reborn just to keep up with them. That's when Kamara jumped in, putting on his best fake smile and acting all official. He said he was more than happy to entrust his brother to Sir Eugene, explaining that Felid was an adult now and could choose his own path. Verthel just glared at everyone, probably planning his next evil move. Our hero took one look at the poor kid and thought to himself that, in this world, weak people were always hunted. Once a predator like Verthel set his sights on you, hiding was useless. He'd just hunt you down no matter what. He remembered his own advice to Felid: if you can't be strong, you need to find a pack. After that, Verthel started his evil plan again. He said in the meantime, he wants to show Eugene his studies, but then in a mocking tone he asked if our boy was even able to read. But before our MC could answer, suddenly, a scout ran up and announced that there were no monsters lurking nearby and that nothing had escaped from the tunnels. Galfredic, looking like he lived for trouble, grinned wildly and called out that it was time to open the dungeon. With his signal, the massive gate started to open, and a wave of darkness rolled out. The soldiers started shouting, all hyped for the raid, and the big boy turned around one last time, shouting to everyone in the back that, bottom line, they had to survive on their own if they wanted to make it out. The squad rushed inside, with Kamara and Felid standing at the gate, wishing them luck and praying for their safe return, telling the group they'd see them in 4 days. But let's be real. Inside the dungeon, everything went to hell in about 2 seconds. Monsters came raining down from the ceiling, smashing right into the soldiers. Panic broke out, blood was flying, and some poor guy was already screaming for help. Galfredic did not waste a second. He swung his giant sword and split a monster in two, trying to get the group to chill and get it together. He roared at the panicking soldiers, calling them idiots and yelling that they needed to stay in their formation. He barked orders at the archers in the center to hold their ground and shoot at anything dropping from above, warning the rest not to let the monsters break their ranks. Meanwhile, one soldier was so terrified he started regretting ever volunteering for this job. He thought this was complete madness and decided the only way out was to run for the entrance. But when he tried to escape, he found a pack of monsters blocking the way, all grinning as they had just found dinner. Just as the guy was about to get eaten, Eugene showed up out of nowhere, cool as ice, and called him a fool for thinking the way back would ever be safe. Then Galfredic grabbed the guy, rough as always, and explained loud and clear that the only way to survive was sticking close to the group. He ordered everyone to get their swords out and hold steady. He looked over the mess and realized this squad was pathetic, just a bunch of mercenaries thrown together in a rush. And now he was supposed to conquer a dungeon with them? Good luck with that. Just as things started to settle, someone yelled that more monsters were coming, and another guy screamed that now they were getting attacked from behind too. The big boy had to think fast and told everyone to change formation so they could handle getting hit from both sides. Yeah, this dungeon run was already looking like an insane nightmare, and it was just getting started. The monsters were attacking from both sides, and everyone was freaking out. That's when our hero Eugene just stepped up like it was nothing. He announced that he would handle the rear guard by himself. Galfredic, the big, scary knight, tried to warn him that being alone back there was basically suicide. But did our MC care? Nope. He just dashed into the darkness so fast, even the big boy looked like he'd seen a ghost. A few seconds later, sounds of crazy fighting echoed through the tunnel, roaring monsters, violent smashing, and then something came flying out of the shadows. Galfredik stared and realized that thing was actually the mask Eugene had been wearing. Bro was fighting with his face out, not even hiding anymore. That was insane. Right then, the big boy didn't waste time. He told Partek to cover him, and they rushed after RMC. When they finally caught up, they just stared in shock. Eugene had blown past everyone, running a ridiculous distance in no time, and he was standing there in a pile of dead monsters as he'd just finished a boring chore. He held up a glowing flower and asked in a cold voice if it was worth anything. Galfredik was still out of breath, and Partek was annoyed that our boy didn't even know what a common luminous herb was. Dude could slaughter a horde of monsters, but didn't know basic plants. The big boy couldn't believe it. Eugene was a beast in battle, but totally clueless about simple stuff. The luminous flower started to wither in his hand, but he didn't really care. After that brutal fight, the squad was a mess. Wounded soldiers lay all over the floor, groaning and screaming as they tried to stop the bleeding. Some of Eugene's guys came up, carrying the magic stones they'd collected from the dead monsters. Our boy told them to pile everything up in front of him. When he looked at the tiny pile in his hand, he was annoyed. Was this really all they got after killing so many monsters? He told the boys to take a break, but he kept thinking about those stones. These ones glowed blue, which was different from the red ones he got from the swamp monster before. Suddenly, Miran, the little fairy, appeared. Whoa! It's been a while since we heard her voice again, guys. She was staring at the magic stones with a sour face. She explained that these stones were kind of trash compared to the really good ones. The bigger and stronger the monster, the better the stone, she said. Eugene, always curious, asked if wild wanderers had bigger stones. She told him that just because a dungeon monster ran away and became a wanderer didn't mean its magic stone got any bigger. But she reminded him that the crocodile monster he had eaten before was special, huge, and super strong. She said finding something like that was rare, and it was lucky he got it. It was strong enough to rule her old territory all by itself. Our MC started to get it. Devouring that giant monster's magic stone was pure luck. Miran told him that if all the monsters in this dungeon were this weak, he was wasting his time trying to impress nobles with such pathetic loot. She wondered if there were any tough bosses hidden deeper inside. Eugene suddenly stopped, sensing something. Meanwhile, Galfredik, the big boy, went full drill sergeant again. He yelled at the tired soldiers, telling them that break time was over. He called them weaklings and said he and Eugene would take the front. He warned that anyone who tried to run away would get wrecked later. Our hero looked at him, kind of surprised. This was actually his first time in a dungeon, but now he was supposed to lead from the front? Well, someone had to do it, and the mercenaries were no help. Right then, Galfredik pushed ahead carefully, thinking the new mob of monsters coming up was on a totally different level than the small fries they had just fought. He guessed the goblins before were just cheap pawns, and the real bosses were about to show up, he told our boy. Right then, a whole gang of heavily armed orcs appeared, proving him Galadik right. These were mid-rank monsters for sure, and if they survived this, the next ones would be even nastier. The soldiers looked like they wanted to puke from fear. But Eugene was remembering the day he ate the red stone from the swamp lord. He'd gotten a new ability from that. His eyes glowed red, and he wondered if eating another strong stone would give him something else. But he snapped back to reality and listened. He told Galfredik there were more than 50 monsters about 100 meters away, and 3 of them were extra big. The big boy grinned as he'd just gotten good news and asked Eugene if he wanted to try smashing the enemy first this time. Our MC just grabbed a spear and hurled it with insane strength, drilling it straight through a monster's skull. Galfredik yelled for everyone to attack. Might as well use the chaos he just made. Eugene shot into the orc crowd like a hurricane, ripping through them before anyone could blink. Meanwhile, in the back, Galfredik shouted for the soldiers to back our boy up, and for once, they actually listened. One soldier even asked if they should jump in, but he was too busy facing a monster twice his size. The massive orc swung at him, but our boy dodged easily and stabbed it right in the eye, blinding it. The beast screamed, but Eugene didn't stop. He danced around and chopped off its limbs, then finished it off with his sword, spraying blood everywhere. He was basically a one-man apocalypse. That day, everyone in the squad saw something they would never forget. They always thought knights were supposed to be noble and cool, but what they saw was Eugene fighting like a wild animal. Some of them still tried to tell themselves he was fighting with dignity and honor, but deep down, everyone knew this knight was a monster. He scared his own team more than the enemy. After the battle, the guys slumped down, totally exhausted, surrounded by orc bodies. Galfredik noticed something bad. The men weren't just tired. They were basically broken inside from watching Eugene's insane fighting. He knew there was no way they could keep going. Not with the army this messed up. He approached our protagonist and suggested they retreat now, since they'd already hit their quota. But Eugene turned to him, cold as ever, and said he still had plenty of energy. Leaving now just felt like a waste. Then Galfredic tried to rally everyone, saying that if Eugene continued the journey, they had to do the same. But then our hero did something nobody expected. He told the big boy to take the main squad and leave the dungeon right away. He said he would keep going, just with his mercenaries. The soldiers just stared, totally shocked. But Galfredic understood that Eugene was letting the exhausted soldiers escape so they wouldn't get killed. Underneath that super cold and savage side, our MC actually had a heart. The big boy watched as Eugene walked into the darkness, thinking that this guy was redefining what it meant to be a knight. Yeah, our hero was something else. So, without hesitation, our boy Eugene was marching deep into the creepy dungeon with his mercenaries, which only left two, who were Commander Partek and Raban, who came after, and the place was just packed with spiderwebs. Raban was not having a good time. He was shaking so badly that his torch almost fell out of his hand. The poor guy started cursing his luck, wondering why the hell he had to be here in the first place. He tried to make himself feel better by thinking that Sir Eugene could beat a troll without breaking a sweat, so maybe if he just stayed close behind, nothing bad would happen. But then, Raban heard this nasty crunch under his boot. He looked down and, to his surprise, he'd stepped on a little spider. The moment he realized what that meant, his face went pale. Bro understood right away that they were in spider territory now. That's when it got even worse. All of a sudden, hundreds of tiny red eyes started glowing in the darkness, popping up all around them. Spiders were everywhere, blocking the path and closing in. And then the real boss showed up, a giant cave spider, looking like pure nightmare fuel. This thing was famous for eating anything alive by melting it down with poison first. The poor guy, Raban, lost it and started screaming while the entire swarm rushed them. Realizing the situation, Commander Partek was quick to shout that there were too many and yelled that they should run away right now. But our boy just shot him the coldest look, like he was asking if he had lost his mind. What was this talk about running away? That wasn't in our hero's vocabulary. Without missing a beat, Eugene blasted forward like a tornado, slicing through spiders left and right. Blood and spider guts went flying everywhere. Our MC's eyes were shining with that freaky confidence, and he just grinned, basically saying that this many spiders were nothing to him. The commander told Raban to cover Eugene's back, but he could barely keep himself together. He was swinging his weapon around, trying not to let a spider crawl up his leg, but he was losing that fight pretty fast. Our boy, even while fighting off 100 spiders in the front, saw what was about to happen. The poor boy was screaming for help. A gigantic spider dropped down from above, jaws wide open to bite his head off, and the kid just froze. But our hero was everywhere at once. He jumped in and cut the monster in half with one clean swing, saving Raban at the last possible second. Right then, Raban just stared at Eugene, totally blown away. He got up, looking at our MC like he was some kind of god, or maybe the scariest monster of all. After being saved, he still had enough sense to tell the others that our boy was way too amazing, and maybe they could just call it a day and go home now. He called out to his commander to see if maybe, just maybe, they could stop here, since they were all still alive. But then, Partek stopped dead in his tracks. The poor commander just remembered something nasty about dungeon monsters. There were ranks, and the really scary ones almost never showed up. So, nobody in their squad planned for it. Suddenly, a huge shadow moved over the webs, and a leg the size of a tree trunk appeared. That was it. He knew right away that this was the boss of all cave spiders, the Spider Lord. This monster was giant, its eyes glowing with evil, and everyone felt real fear for the first time. He lost it and yelled for our MC to retreat, saying there was no way they could beat a Lord rank monster. He even said maybe they should come back with Sir Galfredic, but Eugene shut that idea down right away. He told him and Raban to withdraw, while he stood facing the monster alone. His eyes went bright red, and he said this prey was his and his alone. Partek tried to answer, but he could barely talk, because now even Eugene was scarier than the spider. His whole body was screaming to get out, just from being near our boy, not just the monster, so he just nodded and ran away. Meanwhile, Miran, the tiny fairy, watched as everyone ran for their lives. She said their instincts totally collapsed because the gap between their power and her master's was just too huge. Eugene asked her if this lord was like the swamp monster he had fought before, but she shook her head and said this one was probably even stronger. But you know what? Instead of being scared, our hero actually smiled at that. He guessed that meant the magic stone inside the Spider Lord would be even bigger. He stepped up to the monster, basically taunting it, telling the thing to fight as hard as it wanted. Our MC was excited. The tougher the monster, the better the reward inside. Then, just like that, everything changed. The story jumped to a sunny garden with a teacup and a tiny spider hanging from a thread. Eugene, now looking totally human, flicked the spider away with one finger and sat there, chill as ever. Turns out, after eating that Swamp Lord's magic stone, our protagonist unlocked a second power, camouflage. He could use his skin-hardening ability to look and feel just like a regular human, which meant for the first time ever, he could walk around in sunlight. Dude didn't have to hide in the shadows anymore. Now he was at a super fancy table, surrounded by nobles, with everyone staring at him. Someone asked if he was really outside without his mask for once. A fancy lady said maybe he wore it just to hide his good looks, and others kept begging him to tell his wild dungeon stories. The ladies were all about him, whispering that they heard he soloed a giant spider. Eugene just sat there, keeping his mouth shut like a pro. Yeah, now our boy has become the most wanted person for the girls, bro. And just like always, then, out of nowhere, Miran, floating around, started laughing at how Eugene looked even more tired from talking to these nobles than after fighting monsters. The ladies kept flirting, calling him beautiful, and wondered if he had elf blood. That caught our boy off guard. He thought to himself that being mistaken for an elf was about to make his life a whole lot more complicated. Then, out of nowhere, Galfredic banged the table and said that explained everything. The sharp eyes that could see in darkness. Hearing better than a wild animal. All of it. The knight gave Eugene a look, saying he knew our boy wasn't just a normal human. He did his best to keep looking normal, but inside, he was sweating bullets. Galfredic, holding a drink and bound Raban with his hands, being as loud as ever, said he was amazed that Eugene might have elf blood. The poor guy, Raban, still stuck at the table, looked like he wanted to disappear. The big boy pointed at our hero's face, wondering how he managed to stay hidden with a look like that. Eugene replied that he never tried to hide on purpose. Life just worked out that way. Galfredic was surprised, and the ladies and Raban just looked embarrassed by how wild he was being. He even joked about how Eugene could sweet-talk the ladies without breaking a sweat, and, yeah, the ladies actually really liked it. So yeah, Eugene sat there at the nobles' table, looking like nothing could bother him, while the others made noise around him. But our boy was thinking hard. He saw that Galfredic, for all his wild jokes and big mouth, actually noticed a lot more than people thought. The guy had sharp eyes, and he realized that if anyone started to question him someday, maybe pretending to be an elf would work out pretty well. Seemed like a good excuse to keep in his back pocket, bro. Then, out of nowhere, Eugene's mind drifted back to that weird moment when he ate the magic stone. That wasn't just about getting some new cool power. When one of those old tattoos on his skin disappeared, something freakier happened. Strange memories came crashing in, memories he had never remembered before. He saw himself lying somewhere, but it was a place he'd never been. There was this soft hand holding his, bells ringing, and a bunch of people staring at him. Some woman was there, laughing, but Eugene had no idea who she was. The whole thing was nuts, and he started to wonder if these memories were even real, or just some weird dream. All he really knew for sure was his name, Eugene. That was it. But, of course, the world never gives our MC time to think. Raban's voice snapped him out of it. The poor guy was shaking, begging Sir Eugene to save him from, well, whatever nightmare he was having. Our boy turned to see him getting manhandled by Galfredic, who had him by the neck. The big boy was roasting Raban, saying he was nothing but dead weight for our MC to carry around. The poor guy tried to fight back, yelling that anyone in his place would have run too, because Sir Eugene wasn't even human. Bro had a point, honestly. But Galfredic just turned it up, pretending to be mad, shouting that he was basically calling our MC a monster now. He looked like he was about to train Raban into the ground. While Raban kept screaming for help, Eugene just watched with a blank face. His mind went right back to the same problem. He only really knew his name, nothing else about his past. But now, after all these crazy events, he had a feeling. If he could erase those tattoos one by one, maybe he'd finally find out the truth about himself. Raban's cries kept echoing in the background, but Eugene's eyes just got colder. He was dead set on figuring out who he really was, even if it meant turning the world upside down. Things moved pretty fast after that. Next thing you know, Eugene was in Lord Tyrwin's fancy room, standing next to Galfredic after their dungeon adventure. The big boy stepped up first, being all proper, saying he was Crema Karima, Galfredic's third son, and that it was an honor to meet Lord Tyrwin. Our MC followed, bowed, and said he was Jan, the eldest son of the Eugene family, just laying it on thick with that fake noble stuff. Lord Tyrwin said they sure had been through a lot. He told his servant to hand over their reward, saying he'd heard Eugene needed a certificate to prove who he was, though he didn't think it was really useful. Eugene took the paper, thanking the Lord, and Miran, his invisible fairy buddy, was doing a little victory dance nearby. Happy, their sneaky plan worked. But then, suddenly, Lord Tyrwin started coughing hard. Kamara, his son, rushed over, all worried, calling out to his dad. The old lord's voice got super weak, and he said Verthel's ambition was so heavy that it wouldn't let him die in peace. The heir told his dad not to worry, that he'd take care of the territory. But Lord Tyrwin grabbed his hand like this was his last chance to say something important. He told him that the land was really just dust, and a true lord needed to think about something bigger. He finished by saying a real leader must look after his people, not just the land. Felid, standing quietly in the back, was listening hard to these last words. Then, just like that, Lord Tyrwin's hand slipped away, and he was gone. It was over. Eugene stood there, watching everything. He didn't really know Lord Tyrwin, but he saw a bunch of people crying real tears. Some folks actually cared, but not everyone was sad. Eugene spotted Verthel in the crowd with a face full of anger, not grief. Guess not everyone took death the same way. But after that, as the sun set, Galfredic got ready to leave during the funeral. He apologized to Kamara, saying sorry he had to go, but work called. The heir understood, saying he knew how busy things were. Before leaving, the big boy turned to Eugene, asking if he was really going to stay behind. Our MC hit him with a serious look and explained he planned to visit the dungeon again. He said it would be stupid to leave after all the trouble they went through to open it. Galfredic laughed, a little sad, and said it was too bad Count Evergrow would have loved to meet someone like our boy. Then, out of nowhere, he stuck out his hand. Big smile on his face, he said it was an honor to face another strong knight like him, and he hoped they'd never have to fight as enemies. The two of them shook hands. Hard, with that silent respect only real warriors understand. Right then, our big boy rode out on his horse, and Raban called out goodbye, wishing him a safe trip. Eugene immediately told Partek to get things ready for departure. That's when Felid got confused, saying that our boy just said he was staying here. The leader of mercenaries, Partek, asked the kid what Galfredic rode off on. He said, duh, a horse. Then Partek pointed out that knights always ride horses, so of course they needed one for Sir Eugene, and they needed to sell the monster's byproduct. He grinned and said they'd hit up the merchant guild to sell off monster loot and buy a horse for the boss. Felid's eyes lit up, and he promised our MC loudly that as his squire, he'd do anything for him. But our hero just gave him the coldest look. He told him he didn't need any help right now, making the kid freeze on the spot. The poor guy could barely get out a word, totally shocked by what Eugene meant. Guess he just got a taste of what a scary boss feels like. Alright, time to see what kind of trouble our boy gets into this time. So, the story jumped to Marin, Kingdom of Kalar, the wildest trade city in the whole kingdom. Seriously, you've never seen so many people running around in your life. Right in the middle of all that craziness, there was poor Felid, carrying boxes stacked so high you could barely see his head. Some random worker started yelling at him to move faster and stop being so lazy, but all he could do was sweat and try not to drop anything. Meanwhile, Raban was working the crowd hard. He stood there bragging, telling everyone how a single knight brought in all these dungeon goods, and then pointed straight at Sir Jan Eugene. Suddenly, people in the street started whispering to each other, saying they heard stories about a rookie knight who cleared out the dungeon in Tyrwin territory, and some even said this guy ripped the head off a troll while it was still alive. Man, people sure loved their rumors. The kid, Felid, finally dumped his boxes and just stood there, looking totally worn out. Meanwhile, Raban started shouting at a merchant, telling him not to touch the goods. So yeah, things were a little chaotic. While Felid waited outside, staring at the building with tired eyes, he realized things were taking forever inside. It was like they were trying to set the world record for longest meeting. Inside, our protagonist sat across from this merchant, Billmore, who belonged to the Palin Guild. This guy, Billmore, was way too pumped up, telling our MC he'd take care of everything, no worries at all. Eugene thought back to when Partek swore this was a good guild, but honestly, our hero still wasn't sure he trusted any of these humans. Still, he figured this could be useful since he barely understood how human business worked. But, before the conversation was done, out of nowhere, the door slammed open so hard the walls probably shook. In marched some dude with a monocle, looking all important, not even pretending to be polite. While Billmore was busy explaining his cheap shipping rates and going on about exclusive contracts, this new guy just cut in, demanding to know who the hell Sir Eugene even was. You could practically see Partek start sweating, and he leaned in to whisper to Eugene that things just got complicated. Our MC asked him what that meant, and he explained that this guy was Secretary Grail, some big shot from the Merchant Guild, and he could mess up their deal if he wanted. He told him to be careful unless he wanted to lose a good business partner. The Billmore tried to speak up, saying he was in the middle of closing a contract, but Secretary Grail just smacked his hand in his face like the guy was a fly. He started mocking everyone, saying there was no signed contract yet and acting like he ran the place. Then he mentioned hearing rumors about a knight tearing off a troll's head and dragging a mountain of loot here, but he basically called all that nonsense. He said tricky rookies always made up stories to hype their goods, but he could see right through that junk. Then Grail started acting like the boss, saying the deputy manager wanted to make a special deal with Eugene personally, but really, you could tell he just thought our hero was some dumb muscle. He even claimed he would strip him of everything. But when he looked at him, our hero just stared back with this cold, scary look that made the air feel like ice. Suddenly, all that confidence disappeared from Grail's face. The dude started sweating buckets, eyes wide like he'd seen a ghost. He stuttered out an apology, saying he was sorry for being rude and that he was actually the secretary to the deputy manager, and that this whole thing was a super great opportunity for Eugene. Hearing that, our boy just looked at him without blinking and asked what kind of opportunity he was talking about. He tried to explain, but couldn't even get his words straight, saying they could offer better deals for materials. Eugene just stared even colder and asked what those better deals actually were. That was it for him. He totally lost it, apologizing over and over, until he finally ran out of the room, promising to come back next time. The guy practically left a trail of sweat behind him. Meanwhile, Bill Moore just stood there, looking at Eugene with tears running down his face like he'd seen a miracle. He was touched. He couldn't believe our boy turned down a big deal with the deputy manager just for him. He told Eugene he'd always be on his side now, and Eugene liked that answer. Bill Moore got super hyped and wanted to know when they could start selling. Eugene didn't even blink, he said. They were starting right now and told the guy to come with him, which totally surprised him. Back at the fancy guild building, Secretary Grail was standing in front of his boss with his head down, looking like a kid who'd gotten caught stealing cookies. He told the deputy manager that Eugene refused their offer and tried to say Eugene was way too scary to be normal. The deputy manager just smiled, saying knights always made things difficult for merchants because of their pride, but she didn't look worried at all. She looked out the window at Eugene, standing in the street like he owned the place, and called him a poor knight who didn't even have a proper horse. She told her secretary to go give our MC a gift, something so good that a broke knight couldn't possibly say no to it. You could tell she was cooking up some new scheme. Meanwhile, the poor Squire Felid was about to get the shock of his life. Eugene called him over and told him to stay behind and sell materials. The kid looked super sad and confused, asking why he had to stay again. He wondered if it was because he wasn't good enough to follow Eugene, and even begged to start sword training right away. But our boy just hit him with a question. What exactly was a squire supposed to do? He got all fired up and explained it was about helping his knight in battle and daily life. Eugene agreed, but told him his job right now was to help out by handling all these business deals. He wanted him to sell off the goods from their fights and learn from Bill Moore how this stuff worked. Then the kid finally understood, and he could feel deep down that our hero had saved his life more than once. So, whining about something this simple would be just embarrassing. Eugene saw what the boy was thinking, so he gave him a little bonus. He promised that once they made some real money, he'd think seriously about teaching him how to use a sword. He even told the kid that, someday, he'd get to help Eugene fight as a real squire. Velid's eyes lit up with hope, and he slammed his hand to his chest, swearing he'd do whatever Sir Eugene asked. Our boy just gained a loyal squire, and maybe a future businessman, all in one crazy day. So, after all those business deals, Eugene left the shop feeling pretty good, until he checked his pockets. Bro, he was totally broke. He just bought the bare minimum gear, but somehow it felt like his money had vanished into thin air, and he couldn't believe how fast it disappeared. Mirren, the little fairy, was buzzing around him with a sour face, saying her wallet was empty and even her heart felt empty now. She whined, asking if they could get rich again soon because this broken life was just too much. Then, while they were walking, our boy stopped dead in front of a shop window. There was this full-plate armor inside, looking all shiny and expensive. Partek came up, his eyes huge, saying that kind of armor was every knight's big dream. When he called it a dream, Eugene stared at him like he was nuts and asked if dream just meant it was super expensive. Partek said it wasn't just about the money. It was something even rich knight families passed down for generations. In other words, totally out of reach for broke guys like them. Suddenly, someone let out a high-pitched scream, calling for the boss. It was Raban, sprinting up with panic all over his face. He said a giant horde of monsters was heading for Marin City from the east, and the city guards and guilds were barely holding them off. The leader told our MC they should probably join this monster hunt, but he just looked at him coldly and asked what was in it for them. Raban nearly jumped out of his skin with excitement, explaining that, unlike dungeons, there were no commission fees with wandering monsters. He went on and on about how Marin was a merchant city swimming in money, so the loot from those monsters could be sold for big cash, right there, with no travel costs. Raban's eyes looked totally crazy as he summed it up with just one sentence. This was a chance to make huge money. As soon as Eugene heard the word money, his whole attitude changed. He gave the order to move out right away, not wasting a second. But before they could even get moving, someone yelled at them to wait. It was Secretary Grail, running up out of breath, dragging a horse behind him. He was panting hard and complained that everyone ran way too fast. Then he puffed out his chest and said he was here to deliver a war horse, a gift sent by the deputy manager herself. He started bragging about how this horse had shiny black fur and huge muscles. saying this was a real noble steed, the kind with perfect bloodlines. Eugene looked stunned, asking if the deputy manager really sent this just for him. Grail saw that scary look in our hero's eyes again and started sweating, stuttering that yes, the horse was a gift, and they wanted absolutely nothing back. Our boy ignored the dude's nerves and walked straight over to the horse, while Grail kept mumbling that this was just a simple present to show their friendship or whatever. He got up on that horse like he'd been born in a saddle, then told the secretary to thank his boss for him. He just stood there, eyes all wide, not knowing what to say next. Miran was jumping around in the air, screaming that they should go get some money. Eugene took off, speeding away so fast even the wind looked jealous. Meanwhile, Raban and Partek just stood there, stunned, mouths open as Eugene shot ahead. The rookie boy, Raban, asked what they were supposed to do now that the leader had left them in the dust. His boss yelled at him to stop whining and get running, so off they went, legs pumping like crazy, while Grail just stood there, staring after them, completely silent. Okay, back to the story. Out in the forest to the east of Marin City, things were getting nasty. There was a bloody battle raging between humans and a massive mob of goblins. Suddenly, everyone heard the thunder of hooves, and Eugene burst onto the scene riding his new black horse, crushing goblins underfoot without even slowing down. He swung his sword like a monster, chopping off goblin heads and sending blood flying everywhere. Miran saw how many goblins there were and realized this was way worse than they expected. She guessed the Marin Guild guys fighting up front were probably already dead. But our boy was cold and focused. He decided this was perfect for him. He didn't like sharing loot, so the more chaos the better. He kicked his horse and charged deeper into the fight, planning to take every last reward for himself. From far away, our boy noticed a blonde knight fighting like crazy, shouting at the goblins that they wouldn't get past him alive. The guy was brave, but with so many enemies, his horse tripped and he got thrown right into the middle of the monsters. He tried to act tough, announcing he was a proud knight of Marin, but his face went pale when the goblins surrounded him. The guy started screaming for help, looking death right in the eyes. At that exact moment, Eugene's sword sliced down from above, cutting a goblin clean in half right before it could kill the knight. Then our MC smashed through the mob on his horse, swinging his sword at lightning speed, cutting down every monster around them. Goblin arms and legs went flying, while the knight stared at him like he was seeing a ghost. He kept pushing the monsters back, making a safe space for both of them. The blonde knight managed an awkward smile, saying he owed Eugene big time and asked for his name right in the middle of all that madness. But before our boy could answer, another sneaky goblin tried to attack, so he had to save the guy again. Then, he asked if names really mattered when they might both die here. Because, seriously, what would be the point? The knight started laughing like a maniac, saying our MC was right and regained his fighting spirit. He jumped up, swinging his sword and promising that if they lived through this hell, he'd definitely ask again. So the two of them fought side by side, cutting down goblins one after another while the city's defenders gave it everything they had. In the end, they won. Marin City was saved thanks to those two going nuts in the middle of the battle. When the dust settled, everyone wanted to know who that mysterious knight was. The blonde knight stood up, proud as anything, and told the whole city that his name was Jan Eugene. The crowd started whispering and buzzing, talking about all the unbelievable things they'd heard, like how he ripped a living troll's spine right out. People cheered, calling out Jan Eugene's name, and for a second, our boy was the biggest hero in the city. But way up high, some guy with red hair and a thick beard watched everything from a window. This dude, Louis Palin, who used to be the mayor's Palin Trading Company, just muttered to himself that Jan Eugene's fame was going to be a problem soon. The stronger this new hero got, the harder it would be to control him. So, yeah, looks like our protagonist just made his own life a little more interesting, and maybe a lot more dangerous. The old mayor, Louis Palin, was pacing around and looking worried. He asked his granddaughter Priscilla if she really thought it was safe just to let things play out like this. But Priscilla, she was chill as ever, grinning all sly, and told her grandpa that everything was under control. In fact, she said she actually wanted Lord Eugene's fame to keep blowing up. She explained that the more famous a knight gets, the more scared he is of losing all of it. Then she nudged her grandpa and asked if he'd heard about the heir hanging around with Eugene. Then he said he knew. It was that kid Eugene kept sending to the guild to sell monster loot under his name. Then she dropped the real bomb. That kid was a hidden, illegitimate son from the Turwin family. Her grandpa was totally shocked and realized just how big this was. She finished her little speech, saying that whatever Eugene's plan was, he clearly wanted to make a ton of money for that Tyrwin kid. She figured if they stayed close to those two, they might even lock in a friendship with the future head of the Tyrwin family. Louis could only laugh, super proud of his granddaughter's brain and her plan to buy up Eugene's loyalty. He decided that, as Marin's mayor, he needed to send Eugene a big present to reward him for saving the city from the monster mess. But he wanted her name on the recommendation so that she could get in even closer to Eugene. She thanked him, looking all pleased. While she sipped her tea, Priscilla thought to herself that a thirsty person always goes looking for water. Her strategy? Dig the well and chill, waiting for the right people to show up and drink what she's selling. She heard footsteps coming and stared at the door like a hunter watching for prey. Right on cue, Eugene walked in, rocking his shiny new armor. She greeted him with a big, fake-looking smile, calling him the hero of Marin City. Our MC said he came over to thank her, since she was the deputy manager for the Palin Guild. Priscilla told him to sit, and they started having tea together. While he sipped his drink, she secretly checked him out, thinking it was crazy that someone who looked that good could also rip off a troll's head. She realized he was nothing like any other knight she'd met. She started to compliment his armor, saying it fit him perfectly, and told him it was a gift from the mayor. She explained she'd personally made sure it was made at Marin's best workshop, using special steel with elf iron and ghoul bones, so tough that even a dragon would have trouble biting through it. She asked what he thought. Eugene just replied in his usual cold voice that the armor would make his next dungeon run a lot safer. He also thanked her for the nice rooms and food, saying his mercenaries looked better than ever and would probably get even more done because of it. Priscilla smiled with that sneaky look, saying she was glad he liked everything. Our boy promised he'd show his thanks for her goodwill. But before she could make her real move and pitch her plan, Eugene suddenly stood up and said he was busy and had to leave. Priscilla sat there in shock, not expecting him to bounce that fast. As he started walking away, our boy said that once the Turwin family's dungeon raid was finished, plenty of things could still happen. But, just so she got the message, he made it clear, his contract only covered selling dungeon leftovers to the guild, nothing else, and this might be their last chat. She bit her lip, totally pissed off, while Eugene said cold as ice that he was going to focus on gathering more magic stones from now on. As Eugene tried to leave, Priscilla suddenly screamed for him to wait. He stopped and turned around, and she asked if there was more to say. He shot her a glowing red side-eye, waiting for her to spell it out. Now she dropped her sweet act and came at him hard, saying there was only so far they could all pretend not to notice what was really up. She pointed out all the crazy gifts, the best armor in Marin, that super horse, luxury hotel rooms, and fancy food for his whole crew, and then told him that what he sold to the guild didn't even pay for half of that. She glared, and asked if his mom never taught him that everything has a price, pretty much calling him a freeloader. That girl pushed more, wondering if he was just some shameless knight with zero honor, and warned him that the city would turn against him if they found out he was just milking them for all they were worth. She called him the hero of Marin, Lord Eugene, all sarcastic, and demanded to know if he really planned to take everything and just disappear, challenging him to talk his way out of this one. But our boy? He just grinned, a scary, mocking grin that made the whole room freeze. He told her she was hilarious for thinking he'd fall for her tricks. He flipped everything on her, saying it was her who handed out all these gifts, then tried to demand payment for them like some scammy merchant. His red eye was blazing and he stepped toward her, making the air heavy and making pretty much everyone in the room sweat bullets. He spelled it out super clear. He already had a contract with the Palin Merchant Guild, thanks to Billmore. And as long as someone paid fairly for his goods, he didn't care what rumors people spread. He tossed her own words back, saying everything has a price, so she could talk all she wanted. But as the deputy manager, she'd soon find out what it really meant to pay that price. Then he kept going, saying her little stunt almost made it look like the Palin Guild and Marin were teaming up to trap the knight who saved their city. He warned her straight up, keep it up, and next time Marin's in trouble, don't expect any knight to bother helping. He told her he was done here, and just like that, our boy left, leaving Priscilla, Grail, and Billmore in total shock. Dude, that was savage. Priscilla tried to play the game, but our MC just flipped the whole table. Maybe next time she'll think twice before trying to mess with a vampire. Then, Priscilla finally realized just how badly she had messed up. She thought that if she had played her cards differently, maybe she and our MC could have built a real power team. Now, with Billmore all nervous, she knew she'd lost control big time. Just before our hero could walk out that door, Priscilla called out to him with a shaky voice, begging him to stop. She bowed deeply, hand over her heart, and admitted she had acted rudely and wanted to offer her deepest apologies. She said her greed for power made her blind, and she was honestly sorry for not respecting him. She asked for a clean start and tossed out a new idea. Keep the contract with Billmore, but add one rule that would guarantee Eugene never had to worry about her scheming again. While she stood there, Priscilla thought hard about Eugene. She remembered how other knights always chased money and fame, crawling on the floor for anyone with fancy stuff to offer. But this guy? He was nothing like them. He was scary, the type you seriously did not want to mess with. Her merchant brain just screamed at her. She could not afford to lose this man, no matter what. Our MC finally turned and looked at her. He said he could listen, but only if what she had to say was actually worth his time. It was a cold warning. And wow, Priscilla looked super grateful and thanked him for giving her another shot. Next thing you know, our boy was out in the street, riding his new warhorse while Miran zipped around him, all excited and sparkly-eyed. She said even if he was just showing off, he looked totally amazing, and she called him the best master in the world. Partek was grinning from ear to ear, saying Eugene had locked down a seriously great contract. Our boy agreed, but Partek went on, telling him the Palin Merchant Guild was a giant deal, with a main base in Marin and branches all over the Roman Empire. He pointed to a map, and explained that trading with nobles who ruled crazy places like the Tyrwin family was super important. He added that a merchant guild this big was offering Eugene free access to any dungeon or maze connected to them. He said it straight up, this was way better than getting support from some noble family. He praised Eugene for being a crazy good negotiator. But our MC just looked annoyed and told him the truth. He only said all that back there because he was mad and wanted to mess with them. Before they could go any further, someone popped up in their path. This big, bald mercenary with a face only a mother could love started trash-talking, making fun of Eugene's shiny new armor and saying wearing pretty metal didn't make you a real knight. He even threw shade at Eugene's looks, saying he probably didn't even know how to hold a sword. Eugene just stared him down with those cold eyes, not impressed at all. Miran, flying around, called the guy a potato with a mouthful of nonsense. That made me laugh, not gonna lie. Suddenly, Kamara showed up, greeting them and saying it was with perfect timing. Then Eugene called him Lord Tyrwin out of respect, but Kamara said he could just talk like before, since Eugene had changed a lot in almost no time. Eugene asked how things were going, and Kamara told him his brother wasn't giving up. In fact, the guy hired more mercenaries, but he felt like something was off. Our boy brought up how Kamara's brother hired a bunch of sketchy mercs before, the ones who tried to kidnap Felid. He took a good look at this new crew and, bro, they stank just as bad as the last group. No surprise there. That's when Kamara made it official and asked Eugene to command the next dungeon raid. Before anyone could celebrate, Potato Head, the mercenary, jumped in, talking straight to Kamara instead of Eugene, and asked if he'd become the next boss if Eugene died in the dungeon. Everyone just stood there, totally shocked by how bold he was. The mercenary tried to play it cool, saying he didn't really want to talk about it, but the dungeon was no picnic. People could die easily, so they needed to plan for the worst. He flashed this nasty grin, acting all tough, and said he looked forward to working with Commander Eugene, all in sarcasm. Our MC? He replied ice cold, saying the guy had a point. If he died, Potato Head could have his job, and he even called him Baldy. That nickname made the big dude's face turn red with anger, but he didn't care and just told everyone to move out. Miran flew over fast, whispering to Eugene to watch out for that guy. Eugene told her not to worry. He had his eyes on him. He figured this was just another one of Verthel's lame traps, using mercenaries to try to get rid of him once and for all. But our hero thought it would be hilarious to watch our enemies plan a blow-up right in his face. He even flashed this scary demon smile. And Miran started laughing like an evil sidekick who just found out her boss was even crazier than she thought. And just like that, they started to come to the dungeon again. Once inside the dungeon, Eugene went wild, shredding monsters like he was born for it. Limbs flew everywhere. The bald mercenary watched, mouth open, and realized the rumors about Eugene's power were no joke. Eugene was a one-man army, blowing through monsters and protecting the whole group while the mercs just hung back, looking useless. The big merc knew he had a poison blade already, and even one scratch could kill Eugene. But dude couldn't find a single opening. Our MC was just too good. Eugene stopped in front of a dark doorway and told the squad that only stronger monsters were past this point, and he couldn't promise they'd survive. He said if anyone wanted to keep going, they needed to really think about it. He stared them down with his glowing red eye, making it clear this was serious. Only the brave, or crazy, should follow him deeper. Baldy yelled at his buddies, acting like it would be shameful to stay behind while the commander went alone, but you could see he was just trying to set his trap. The other mercs pumped themselves up, saying they'd follow, while Partek and Raban quietly decided to hold back and keep an eye on things. The leader noticed Eugene seemed to be planning something new this time. That's when our hero started thinking back to last time, when he ran this dungeon with Galfredic the Beast Knight. He admitted to himself, it just wasn't as fun without the big guy around. Galfredic had this way of leading people and picking up the hardest jobs himself, making everyone feel safe, even at death's door. Eugene wondered if maybe, just maybe, they could have cleared this hellhole with even these weak mercenaries if he was here. He found himself really curious. How would his big buddy handle a mess like this? Man, our boy was about to show everyone that in this dungeon, the real monster wasn't hiding in the dark, it was him. Back in the depths of the dungeon, Things got really dark, really fast for our hero and the Merc squad. Eugene, or should I say, the monster, just dropped the whole nice guy act. He looked at the mercenaries and told them straight up that he was done pretending, and if they wanted to die, they could go ahead and try. Then, out of nowhere, Miran showed up, floating right in front of the mercs. The guys totally freaked out, asking what the hell this thing was. They didn't have much time to freak out, though, because she was already blasting them with a crazy storm of water magic. The mercenaries panicked, screaming at each other to dodge or get out of the way, while the whole place exploded into a mess of smoke, water, and chaos. Someone yelled that the monster was using magic, and their voices were full of terror. All you could hear after that was screaming, guys yelling that they couldn't see anything, blades clashing, people pushing and shoving. And in the middle of that mess, our boy Eugene was butchering mercenaries left and right, not caring if they were monsters or humans. One poor dude screamed that his leg was gone. Another shouted, asking if that thing in the darkness was even their ally, because he was seeing some seriously scary stuff. The bald merc, the big boss, tried to rally his guys, but it was useless. He fumbled with a magic stone, cursing the darkness, because he couldn't see a thing. He yelled at his squad to stick together, but all he got was dead, silent air. The silence freaked him out even more. That's when Eugene walked right up to him like a real villain, asking if he needed some light and saying he looked like he was having trouble. Eugene laid on the sarcasm thick, asking if the big guy could see better now. Just right then, the light began to exist, but the first thing he saw was a dungeon monster, ready to finish him off, and that was the moment the bald mercenary finally got it. He was not the hunter here, he was just prey. He stared at Eugene, who was grinning with those glowing red eyes and sharp fangs, and whispered a single word. Monster. Yeah bro, he got that part right. Later, everything moved over to Eugene's room, where things were about to get even messier. Kamara burst in, all out of breath and freaking out. Wanting to know if the rumors he heard were true. Kamara and Verthel ran through the halls, following the noise, and what did they find at the center of the chaos? The big bald mercenary, who turns out to be named Maverick, was lying in a pool of blood, looking totally wrecked. Our enemies. Vertel lost it, shouting Maverick's name and staring like he'd seen a ghost. Maverick looked up, face white as a sheet, and admitted in a shaky voice that he tried to kill John Eugene. Before they could even process, he just blurted out that he only did it because Verthel told him to. Our enemies started sweating bullets, trying to save their own skin, and said Maverick was just nuts and nobody should believe a word he said. Kamara was not having it, and yelled at his brother, asking how far he was planning to go with this mess. Verthel, all sharp and defensive, told him not to listen to some crazy guy, but his face looked weird, less scared, more relieved that Maverick was down for the count. Our enemies tried to press the bald guy to retell the story that it was not Verthel's order to do that. But suddenly, things took a wild turn inside Maverick's head. His eyes glowed red, like he was under a spell or just broken by fear. He started mumbling that he was trash and deserved to die, and before anyone could stop him, he sprinted to the window. Verthel tried to grab him, but Maverick just hurled himself out, falling all the way down and landing on a statue. Ouch. Kamara and the others stared down at the broken body, totally stunned. Our enemies tried to use the situation, saying, the baldy guy clearly snapped after seeing his friends get ripped up by monsters. He wanted his brother to ignore all the crazy talk. But Kamara noticed something off. Verthel didn't look shocked at all. He looked, if anything, kinda relieved to have the only witness gone. That made him even more suspicious. But then, our enemies tried to blame Eugene next, shouting that he was making up stories and accusing him of some wild conspiracy. He threw out the whole honor of a knight thing, trying to turn everyone against him. But our MC just stared him down and asked cool as ice, if Bertil was really innocent, was he willing to swear on his honor as a knight? Meanwhile, Verthel, looking tense and pissed, said yes, of course, but our boy had a trick up his sleeve. He told everyone that, since Vertel was betting his honor, he wanted a trial by combat, a duel to settle it once and for all. Our enemies looked like he got punched in the gut. He was so stunned and mad, but there was no way out. Word spread through the castle super quickly. By sunset, everyone was gossiping about the duel. The maids and soldiers whispered that the second son of Lord Tyrwin finally went too far, this time hiring an assassin. They wondered who the target was, and then they saw Eugene, dressed for war, standing in the courtyard. The truth was out. The target was the new knight, Jan Eugene. Sir Jan Eugene stood on one side, sword ready, face full of rage and tension. On the other side, Verthel was gripping his sword, not looking too happy about this at all. The referee shouted for everyone to listen, saying the duel would decide the truth. Whoever won would be the honest one here. And then it was on. Our enemies charged in, swinging hard, trying to end things fast. Their swords smashed together, sparks flying with every hit, He went wild, attacking with everything he had, desperate to break through Eugene's guard. But then, in the middle of that fight, Eugene started remembering his old life. He remembered Verthel screaming that he'd found the vampire, and to alert the Holy Knight, Sir Jung Dirt, our MC was burning with rage, thinking how sad it was that he had been chased for 10 years by a loser like this. Back in the moment, their swords crashed again, but now Verthel's face started to change. He was shocked, realizing he couldn't keep up. Eugene pressed in, slashing with a brutal attack that made our enemies stumble and scream in pain. After that, Eugene just played with him, blocking every move, then stabbing fast and knocking Verthel totally off balance. The crowd was holding their breath because, man, this was not looking good for him. And trust me, our hero was just getting started. Anyways, Verthel's sword slipped from his shaking hand. Our boy Eugene stood over him, looking colder than winter, and told him, real slow, asking him to pick up that sword and keep fighting. The enemies? He just knelt there, shaking with pain and shame. Honestly, his sword skills weren't terrible, but let's be real, this was like a kid fighting a bear. Even the random folks in the crowd, people who knew nothing about sword fights, could see it. Sir Jan Eugene was just a monster compared to the Lord's brother. But Eugene didn't waste any more time. He swung his sword and, bam, cut Verthel's hand clean off, blood everywhere. Suddenly, Kamara started screaming from the edge of the field, begging everyone to stop. Our boy turned with a face that said he was done with these interruptions, not with the duel, and told him to stay back. The duel wasn't over yet, he said, not caring that his enemies were missing a hand. Then Kamara explained quickly that he couldn't just stand there and watch his brother die in front of everyone. He declared that since Verthel could no longer fight and couldn't prove anything, the winner was Sir Jan Eugene. His brother was on the ground, still bleeding, and totally losing it. He screamed, wild and insane, that he could keep fighting, that he'd rip Eugene's head off with his bare hands if he had to. The Lord cut him off, telling him it was over and to stop embarrassing himself. He asked his brother to admit what he did and accept prison instead of dying here like this. Verthel completely lost his mind, screaming at his brother to shut up and asking what he'd ever done to deserve such a mess. Then he turned his rage on Eugene, spitting out his name like it was poison. He shouted that none of this would have happened. No shame, no humiliation, if Eugene hadn't shown up in his life. Suddenly, in some wild moment, our enemies actually tried to attack again. Our MC barely moved, and that was it. Verthel was so confused, he couldn't even feel his own body responding. He looked down and realized, yep, his head was on the ground. The rest of his body was somewhere else. Eugene had sliced his neck off in one clean move, so fast it was almost like magic. Our boy just stared down at what was left of Verthel and told him, real cold, that he should have taken the last chance his brother gave him. Without another word, Eugene walked away from the mess, leaving the courtyard totally silent. Kamara stood there, staring at his brother's body and muttered that he was a fool. The look on his face said it all: grief, anger, and maybe even a little relief. The next morning, Eugene walked through the castle, feeling nothing. Mirren appeared beside him, asking whether it was all a waste. Our boy asked what she meant, and she reminded him about the mercenary Maverick. She pointed out that our MC made him into a thrall vampire, and then just tossed him away. Then he explained that Maverick was mentally weak and couldn't handle the change. If he had let him live, everyone would have seen right away that the guy had turned into a vampire. Maverick was just a tool, a way to drag Verthel into a duel and get rid of him. He looked at the tiny fairy, cold as always, and asked if she really thought he'd ever let someone live after they tried to bite him first. Then, she just smirked and said this was exactly what a vampire without blood or tears would do. She teased him, saying a real vampire would have a ton of slaves by now, but Eugene said he didn't want any. She rolled her eyes and said he had zero sense of style. After that, our hero pushed open a door, thinking to himself that turning weaklings into servants just made more messes to clean up later. He wished there was even one person he actually liked. He remembered one person who gained his respect, and just then, he heard someone in the room asking what had happened to Galfredic. He stepped in to find Percella sitting there with Billmore. She was asking when Galfredic showed up, and the old man nervously explained that things were still chaos, but it had already been 2 weeks. Both of them jumped when they saw Eugene suddenly in front of them. Then the old man greeted him with a big smile, giving props for his dungeon victory. Our boy barely nodded, straight to business, and asked what happened to the big boy they had discussed. Then, Percella turned serious and said the big boy Galfredic joined a mission 2 weeks ago trying to clear a maze in Count Evergrose's territory. She dropped the bomb that he went missing alone in that maze. They searched everywhere in the mid-level monster area, but he'd vanished. And the only thing left to guess was that he'd wandered into the place with higher monsters and never came back. Dang, it was such a bomb for our hero. Then the scene switched. Now it was some fancy palace, and a super elegant guy welcomed Eugene. He said he'd heard all the rumors and joked that our boy looked younger and way more handsome than he expected. Our MC thanked him, but didn't bother with small talk, reminding him there was a real problem. The guy, Lord Jevon, the eldest son of House Evergrow, he invited Eugene inside. Back to the story, Jevon admitted, with regret, that Galfredic's ambition went way too far. They'd actually planned to give him a noble title if he pulled off this monster hunt, but nobody expected him to charge into the top floors all by himself. Eugene was stunned and repeated, almost to himself, that big boy went in alone. The Lord confirmed it. He explained that the top floors were areas the Evergrow family had avoided for over 100 years. He dropped his voice and said that area was where the so-called Maze Master lived. Another dude in the room spoke up, explaining that the Maze Master wasn't just some monster, but actually controlled the entire maze itself. He pointed out that Galfredic, blinded by wanting all the credit, had made a reckless move and ended up causing a ton of problems for everyone. Jevon introduced this guy as Sir Lou Gates, a knight who'd led the mission with the big boy. He grinned at our MC, saying he'd heard about their duel and thought it was funny how much they looked alike. He bragged that he was the Evergrow tournament champ and had beaten Galfredic there too, so they had that in common. Eugene looked at him like he was an idiot and asked if that was really important right now. The Lord ignored the awkward moment, telling our boy this only proved how much they all valued Galfredic, and apologized with a fake-sounding sorry for the whole mess. Because he had ever heard that our boy, with that big boy, was bound by an intense friendship. Eugene curses Galfredic in his head because somehow he seems to lose his honor, and hearing our boy being ridiculed, Miran laughs at him with satisfaction. Just then, Jevon decided to act all serious and put on his best friendly act, saying that since Eugene came all this way, he'd get the whole story and support. He wanted him to listen up, so he explained that his family had tried to explore the maze's upper floors for 100 years, but every time, the people who went in just vanished. Because of all those disasters, their family rule was simple. If someone goes missing for more than a month, they're declared dead, and the search is over. Jevon asked if our boy got it, pointing out it had already been 3 weeks since Galfredic disappeared. If nothing changed in the next week, then there really was nothing else they could do. So, our boy didn't waste a single second. He jumped up and said he was going out to search right now. The Lord tried to keep things calm, telling him the maze wasn't some playground you could just walk into. He said Sir Lou Gates would get a whole subjugation team ready in 3 days, so he should chill and rest until then. Our MC stood there thinking about it, silent for a bit. Eventually, he agreed and thanked Jevon, but he wasn't done yet. He said he had one last favor. He'd just hired a witch, and he wanted her to join Eugene's team. He promised she'd be super helpful on this mission. Next thing you know, Eugene and Miran were out on the city streets. She was steaming mad, grumbling about that Sir Lou Gates idiot. She said he was a pointy-headed loser with the worst manners ever, and she threatened to burn his big nose off, like she actually could. Our MC just walked, totally blank-faced, while she ranted. Truth was, he was deep in his own head. Things weren't adding up, and he started remembering the last things Galfredic said before they split. He had told him he was about to get his official title from Count Evergrow, and once he did, he also offered Eugene to come with him. So, why the hell did the big boy get shoved into a new maze campaign alone out of nowhere? Our boy knew he wasn't dumb or greedy enough to try something so dangerous alone. If he was going to do it, he'd have built a real team and gone in slow. He also thought that Galfredic's appointment to the Evergrow should already have been decided, yet he was apparently put to another test, a labyrinth subjugation. Why did they change their minds like that? But suddenly, his thoughts got interrupted by a ton of yelling from nearby. Eugene turned and saw some dude in a mask shouting to a whole crowd, screaming that the Messiah was coming. The guy started warning everyone that if a red shadow fell on the moon, some goddess would get angry and destroy everything. The preacher said the disaster had already started, and monsters were dying because of earthquakes near the maze. He added that a famous knight went missing recently. That got Eugene's attention fast, and even Miran whispered that this was precisely what the weirdos at the palace had said. The masked man kept begging people to dump fresh calf blood at the maze gate and toss in leftover meat as a sacrifice. He said the Messiah would come to save everyone if they did. Some people in the crowd started whispering, asking if this was some weird cult. Miran got all confused by all the goddess talk, but Eugene just watched, picking up on the fact that this village was acting really strange. Then, one of the preacher's followers walked up to Eugene, handed him a leaflet, and warned him that divine wrath was coming, so he should hurry up and believe. Then our boy read the leaflet, which said monsters were dying from earthquakes near the maze. He figured maybe the maze was collapsing and monsters were sneaking out through new cracks. But if that was true, why had Galfredic disappeared too? Something just didn't fit. Without wasting more time, our boy made up his mind. He told the tiny fairy to get ready. They were heading to the maze right now. This shocked her, But he said 3 days was way too long to wait, and he'd start searching alone and crush anything in his way if he had to. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a strange voice cut in from behind. The mysterious person said he was surprised to see a vampire here. That made Eugene freeze, and his eyes went wide. He spun around to see a cloaked figure with a nasty grin, who said he thought vampires were all gone now, thanks to the Holy Knights. The guy wanted to know how he was walking around in daylight like it was no big deal. While the crazy preacher kept yelling in the background, Eugene didn't mess around. He grabbed the stranger and dragged him into an alley, slamming him against the wall. He got up in her face. Yeah, she was a woman. Our boy demanding to know who she was and how she could tell Eugene was a vampire so quickly. He squeezed the woman's neck hard, threatening to snap it if he didn't spill. The stranger started choking and begged to be let go so she could talk. Finally, choking for air, the mysterious person admitted, with a raspy voice, that she was part of the Blood Shadows. Miran's ears perked up at that name, and then she suddenly screamed in shock as she remembered what that meant. The witch rushed in, yelling at Eugene to stop right now and not to kill this woman. Then the tiny fairy explained, totally panicked, that this person was a mage. Eugene was shocked. She said these were Blood Shadows mages, a school that served vampires for generations. Because of their magic, they could sense vampires nearby. While Miran hurried through her explanation, the mage finally fainted from all that choking. The tiny fairy just sighed, saying, well, now she passed out. A few moments later, the witch snapped back awake and started yelling at Eugene for attacking first without even asking anything. She said he almost killed her and wanted to know how she was supposed to answer with his hand crushing her throat. Our boy got all awkward, stuttering out an apology. Miran stepped in, defending him by saying it was the witch who started it with all that creepy talk. The witch calmed down a bit and introduced herself properly. Her name was Cyranoir. She explained she was from the Blood Shadows school, mages who serve vampires and can sense their presence. She said it was an honor to meet someone from the Dark Clans, and added that she was looking for Eugene because young Master Jevin had asked her to help. That's when he realized, so this was the witch Jevin was talking about? Looks like things were getting way more complicated than our MC expected. After that, Cyranoir kept talking, telling Eugene that the young Master Jevin made a big deal about how close he and Galfredic were. That really annoyed our boy, and deep down he was already planning to sew that big boy's mouth shut the next time they met. But she finally got to the point she was actually there during the campaign where Galfredic disappeared. So, our boy quickly asked her to spill everything she knew. Then, just like that, she began her story, saying she had joined Count Evergrow's campaign because she needed monster parts for her magic. She explained that the Evergrow maze was famous for being risky, but since it was discovered 100 years ago and most places had been cleared except for the very top floors, people had grown a bit too comfortable. That all changed when they went deeper. Suddenly, the whole place shook with a massive earthquake. She said the ground under her feet broke apart, and she nearly fell straight down into some endless pit. And right at that second, the big boy was there, guarding the back. He jumped in to save her, but ended up falling in her place. She remembered Galfredic's voice perfectly. He called her an idiot, warned her there was danger at the door below, and then he was gone, dropping into the darkness. She said she only survived because of him. Then she explained that everyone else believed the earthquake had begun when Galfredic opened a gate to the upper floors, but she didn't agree at all. She said she owed him her life and felt it was only right to tell the truth to his real friend, Sir Eugene. She admitted she never expected he to turn out to be a vampire, so Jevin's whole story just felt even more messed up now. Our MC started wondering if he had straight up lied to him or if the facts just got twisted along the way. But the witch wasn't done yet. She dropped one more piece of nightmare fuel. She said she saw something down there in the darkness. She saw a huge eye, way down in the pit where Galfredic fell. Eugene just stood there, stunned, trying to figure out what the hell that was. Then she brought up those weird leaflets the cult guys were handing out in the square earlier. She pointed out that the drawing of the eye on the leaflet looked exactly like the thing she saw deep in the maze. The story took a nasty turn. Somewhere else, that creepy priest was howling for blood and meat as offerings. People brought a victim to the altar, sacrificing them in the name of some savior, while the crowd got sucked into the madness. In the middle of the darkness, a man's face appeared, smiling all evil, whispering that something would rise up soon. Dude, that was pure horror movie stuff. Back in the real world, in another day and place, the city square was buzzing. Workers were dragging barrels of food around. Someone was shouting that everything was set. Mercenaries and Templar knights had arrived and were ready to go. Our boy Eugene stood in front of the giant maze gate, surrounded by all the noise. Lou Gates came over, acting like the king of sarcasm, and asked if our MC was excited about meeting his bestie again. He joked that he hoped they wouldn't have to drag Galfredic's body back, but our boy shut him down, saying that that big boy wasn't the kind of guy to just die like that. The enemies laughed way too loudly and said that his best friend really was a reliable dude. Our MC thought to himself that if it were up to him, he'd have charged into the maze days ago. But now, after hearing about that creepy eye symbol, he realized Galfredic's disappearance was no simple accident. He'd have to keep an eye on that, a fucking night too. Then, he started remembering his time with that big boy, thinking that if his friend could survive 3 weeks, then what was 3 more days? But his thoughts got cut off when a group of masked men walked up and bowed to him. That definitely caught him off guard. The men said they were Templars knights from the local monastery, and they acted like meeting Eugene was the best thing ever. Their leader poured on the praise, saying they were honored to join such a brave and pious knight. He invited our boy to fight with them for God. Miran, just floating there, whispered that calling a vampire pious was the dumbest thing she'd ever heard. Our MC just looked at the knights with a stone face and told them to do their jobs. As Eugene walked away, Lugates couldn't help tossing out another sarcastic line, saying it was pretty rare for Templars knights to care about a regular knight. He even joked that Eugene should try becoming a holy knight one day. Our boy just pictured the title Vampire Holy Knight in his mind and almost laughed. Yeah, that would be a sight. After that, Eugene's face turned serious again. He called over Partek, his captain, and handed him a few quick orders. Inside the maze, things were tense. The commanders told the soldiers to take a little break, drink water, but not drop their guard for a second. Miran zipped around, totally amazed by the waterfalls. She thought the whole place looked awesome and said the air was thick with water energy. Our boy just stood there, completely focused. He noticed that this place wasn't a normal dungeon, it was all built by people. There were barely any monsters, so it was possible someone could actually hide out here for a long time. Right then, Lugates came up and started acting smart, saying this maze seemed perfect for evil things to hide. He asked Eugene what he thought, but didn't bother waiting for an answer. Instead, he buttered him up, saying he was so good that not a single person had died on their way in. So, Eugene just asked him straight up how much farther it was to where Galfredic disappeared. The enemies smiled in this super fake way and told our boy not to be so impatient, reminding him that he trusted that big boy, didn't he? Eugene and Miran just glared at him. Then, Lugates added that right now, the person Eugene should trust was him, since the Evergrow family had already found every trap in the whole maze. Our hero gave him a sarcastic look and asked why, if that were really true, people kept dying. The enemy just gave a creepy laugh and said those deaths were like sacrifices, hoping for safe passage. At that moment, Eugene's eyes flashed bright red and he stared at Jevon and Lugates. Suddenly, he felt something off. The ground shook hard, rocks started crashing from the ceiling, and people began shouting in terror, asking if this was an earthquake. That smarmy guy, Lugates, screamed for everyone to hold tight, yelling that the maze was beginning to shift and change. He told Eugene that this was the spot, and our MC could see the walls shifting all around, opening up new paths every second. He said this was the shortcut to the upper floor, but honestly, this place felt more like a death trap than a shortcut. While rocks started falling, Serenor the witch shouted to Eugene, sounding super impressed by how the earthquake just opened the way right in front of them. Our boy, still suspicious, shot a look at Lugates and asked where the so-called shortcut was supposed to be. The smarmy guy just flashed this evil grin and said the path was exactly where Eugene stood right then. Not good, bro. Next thing you know, the ground split open beneath our MC. Gears grinding, floor shaking, and Eugene realized in that split second that this earthquake wasn't just bad luck, it was a trap, and that smarmy guy had already caught him with it once before and tried to pin the blame on him. So yeah, Galfredic was framed and caught in a trap, our boy wondering what exactly his goal. But before he could even finish that thought, Serenor screamed, her voice shaking. She pointed to something up ahead, looking like she had just seen a ghost. He turned and, man, his eyes went wide with shock and pure rage. There, on a stone platform shaped like a cross, was Galfredic, our MC's friend, all tied up, beaten to hell, and bleeding badly. He wasted no time. He dashed over in a blur, moving so fast he was almost invisible, and checked on his friend. The big boy was still alive, but just barely, and Eugene knew he'd have to get him out right now if he wanted to save him. While our boy tried to plan, Miran the fairy hovered nearby, her voice all nervous as she warned him that something was seriously off about this whole place. She said she could feel weird, creepy energy coming from somewhere deep below, definitely not the normal dungeon vibe. Just then, a strong wind blasted through, and Serenor started asking, freaked out, where it was coming from. That's when it went from bad to full-on nightmare. 2 glowing eyes flashed out of the pitch black, and suddenly, this massive monster stomped into view, wrapped in a terrifying purple glow. Every step made the whole place shake. Serenor totally lost it, yelling that this was a minotaur, asking what the hell a monster like that was even doing here. Eugene didn't hesitate. He snapped at her to protect Galfredic, then charged the monster himself like a madman. Then he used the flying rocks to leap up right toward the monster's head, ready to go full beast mode. But the Minotaur just unleashed this insane attack, smashing him away like a bug. Our boy went flying, crashed into a wall, and hit the ground so hard it had to hurt like hell. The Minotaur raised its weapon, dark energy swirling around it, looking ready to wipe them all out. Eugene, still hurting, clung to the wall and watched every move, waiting for a chance. Then, the monster aimed a brutal strike straight at Galfredic, who was tied and helpless. Eugene went wild, throwing himself forward, screaming his friend's name with everything he had. But right before he reached them, a magical barrier snapped up in his face, blocking him. Our MC hit it full force and got even more pissed. He was a little bit confused about what just happened, why suddenly there's a barrier blocking him from moving. Behind the barrier, Cyranor was shouting that this was a high-tier Minotaur, crazy strong, even for monsters, and she insisted that even a vampire would die going up against it like this. Eugene just snapped, sword at her throat, eyes glowing red as fire, and told her he'd had enough of her interfering. The witch, shaking and scared, apologized, but said she wouldn't just stand by and watch Eugene do something suicidal. She begged him to think straight if he really wanted to save the big boy, because running in like a lunatic would get them all killed. She kept insisting that monsters this strong shouldn't even be in this maze, and that the worst she expected was maybe a cyclops, not this boss from hell. Right then, Eugene glared around, clearly about to explode, when the enemies decided it was the perfect time to run his mouth again. He fake praised Cyranor for her earth magic, then turned on Eugene, calling him a weirdo who only knew how to mix monsters and, by the way, barely survived last time thanks to Galfredic. Eugene gave that smarmy guy a look that could kill, muttering his name with pure hatred. That's when Lugatz showed his true colors. He taunted Eugene, saying he never really wanted to save his friend and that the last time things just went too fast. His goons started closing in. Eugene finally realized that he was the jerk who caused all of this. Galfredic's suffering, the whole mess. He even admitted he set all this up because he thought Eugene missed his best buddy. But he made one big mistake. He tried to act cocky, calling our boy rude and putting a hand on his shoulder. That's when our hero snapped. He grabbed his hand hard and ripped the glove right off, not messing around anymore. Cyranor saw it first. There was some creepy energy coming from Lugatz's hand. Eugene got it instantly. He wasn't strong on his own. He was using some kind of forbidden magic, a power transfer. The witch shouted to watch out, saying that magic like this was banned for a reason. It was made for people to swap strength, but things went crazy when some idiots started using it to steal power from monsters, not just people. Hearing that, the enemies just laughed at the idea of forbidden magic, calling it a joke for scared weaklings. He declared that he and his bunch were the survivors, the chosen ones, and when the world fell apart, they'd be the ones left standing. Eugene stared him down, piecing together that Marmy guy had used borrowed power to crush Galfredic, and then dared to brag like he was all that. With rage burning in his eyes, he decided to put the enemies in his place. He attacked in a blur, sword, teeth, the whole package, slamming into him so hard the whole room shook with the force. Cyranor, shaking, couldn't believe it, asking herself if even a normal vampire should be able to pull off something this crazy. The enemies just grinned, saying he liked hiding his strength and that it wasn't a bad move. Then he triggered another one of his tricks. The whole floor started to collapse. The witch screamed, and the enemies yelled down that every trap in this place was his to control. He looked down at Eugene in the crumbling mess, mocking him and telling him to fall quietly. Eugene shouted for Cyranor, and she dropped another barrier just in time for him to launch himself up like a rocket. He shot straight at Lugatz's, smashing through a wall right in his face, making him finally look scared for once. Now, our boy pressed his sword right to that Marmy's nose, and for the first time, Lugatz had nothing to say, just stunned silence. Inside, he finally admitted to himself that all those stories about Eugene's power were no joke, and maybe he'd bitten off way more than he could chew. He realized that a head-on fight with our boy would have never ended well for him, so using Galfredic as bait and trying to outsmart Eugene was the best shot he had. Yeah, that fucking knight was a real snake, but now he knew he was dealing with a monster that didn't play by his rules. Our MC was just getting started. Meanwhile, Lugatz, that creep, had this twisted smile on his face while he bragged that the final sacrifice for the ritual was about to happen. Meanwhile, the witch was throwing up magic barriers left and right to slow everyone's fall, but she still managed to twist around and look at Eugene, asking in a shaky voice where he was even going. The poor witch was basically losing it from all the pain and crazy stress she was screaming inside her own head, blaming herself for not just playing dumb and running away. But nope, her guilty conscience made her step in, and now she was stuck in this absolute disaster. When she finally looked up again, She found our hero, standing right in front of her with the poor Galfredic, yeah, the big guy, totally unconscious in his arms. He didn't waste time. He gave Cyrano a stare so cold it could freeze hell, and asked if she could save the guy. She nervously explained that healing magic really wasn't her thing. But our boy wasn't having any of that. He shot her another look, flat out telling her that wasn't the answer he wanted. Honestly, the guy's scary when he gets like that. Meanwhile, Cyrano, terrified, just sighed and gave in. She agreed to try and help, even as she stood knee-deep in this weird red liquid. At the same time, Miran, our tiny fairy, started buzzing around, calling out to her boss. She told Eugene she'd checked the entire place, and there was zero chance of finding an exit. The room had no breakable walls, nothing at all, and our MC figured out pretty quick that this was it, the end of the maze, the monster boss room. No way out. But Miran wasn't done. She told him that there was something even more important. She pointed at the creepy red liquid around them, saying she thought she could maybe control it since it looked like it had water energy. But here's the twist. She couldn't do anything because this wasn't normal water. It was a pool of blood, and not just any blood, either. Eugene glanced at these stone cubes with weird eyes carved on them and realized this was the same thing the witch saw earlier, deep underground. Miran explained why she was so freaked out. She could only control the blood of dead things, and since she couldn't touch this stuff, that had to mean the owner of the blood was still alive. That's when everything got even crazier. Out of nowhere, this giant monster rose up from the pool, a real demon-looking thing with huge horns and a terrifying vibe. Cyrano started screaming her head off, trying to heal Galfredic, while Eugene faced down the nightmare beast. Our MC told Miran to find any kind of exit, and she zipped off to search. Now, Eugene knew he couldn't just leave the big boy, who was still bleeding out and totally helpless. So, with no choice, he decided to take on the monster himself. His sword started glowing with energy, and he got ready to paralyze the thing. But the monster didn't wait around. It sent a bunch of razor-sharp blood attacks flying at him, who dodged every one like a total pro. If you blinked, you'd miss him. Our boy kept weaving through the attacks, waiting for his shot. When he saw an opening, he dropped in with a sword strike, but all he hit was armor. Nothing got through. You could hear the frustration, man. And of course, the monster had to raise the stakes by opening its mouth and blasting an energy beam right at him. He barely dodged, landing on his feet with his eyes fixed on the enemy, but it was clear this wasn't going to be easy. He flipped onto one of those stone pillars, just dodging another attack. Looking at his sword, he realized a normal blade was useless here. He figured he had to use his own power, so he covered his sword in this bloody red aura, turning it into a totally new, more brutal weapon. Then, like a missile, he launched himself at the monster and brought that bloody sword down with all he had, slicing a long gash into the monster's body. But damn, he barely made a scratch. The monster only got angrier, swinging back and blasting him so hard he hit the ground, coughing up blood. That sounded painful. While Eugene was struggling, Cyrano was off to the side, pouring all her strength into healing Galfredic, begging him to wake up because their friend was in life or death danger. Meanwhile, Eugene realized the witch was right all along. This monster was on a whole other level. It stood in the middle of the fire and chaos, looking like a demon king while he was starting to look really small. Trying to keep going, our boy looked up to see another attack coming, this time, right for Cyrano and Galfredic. He cursed the whole situation, knowing he had to protect them, even though he was getting crushed. The monster smashed down on him, and the witch screamed his name, terrified out of her mind. Eugene was down, gasping for air, blood all over his face. He couldn't help but feel that old helplessness again, just like his last life. The monster stared straight at him, claws ready to finish the job, and Eugene was left wondering why the hell things hurt so much more now than they used to. One of those attacks finally stabbed right through him, and Eugene dropped, staring at the ground, still asking himself why he was so weak in this moment. But suddenly, while Cyrano kept working on the body in that crazy bloody pool, Galfredic's fingers suddenly twitched. His eyes snapped open, blue as ever, and he stared straight ahead, trying to figure out what the hell was happening. Looks like the story wasn't over yet. Actually, the poor guy could barely get up, but he still managed to cough and spit out some blood, telling her he was sorry for getting her wrapped up in this insane mess. But before Cyrano continued her happiness because that big boy came back to life, she tried to tell him they should run while they still had legs to move. But Galfredic shut her down with a quick "we can't." Like bro, they were basically doomed, but he still said nope, we're not leaving. Then Galfredic's whole story started running through his head. Turns out, dude was only here as bait. He remembered how that snake Lugate set him up just to get to Eugene, and how bragging about being his friend only made things worse. The poor big boy was lying there, all broken, blaming himself for being weak, laughing through the pain, and thinking their friendship probably didn't mean much anyway, and he should have ended their friendship at first. But man, he admitted it, he was totally captivated by Eugene's strength, both inside and out. He just wanted to be strong enough to fight next to our MC, not be a dead weight. But then, he figured it was over for him. Instead of whining, he just got up, grabbed his big sword, and charged at the demon like an absolute madman. Cyrano screamed for him to stop, but he went full hero mode, begging our boy to forgive him. The poor guy got stabbed by a bunch of shadow spikes, and as he faded out, he thought about how, if he could be reborn, he'd want to serve Eugene as a knight again. What a bro. And that's how the big boy ended his life full of honor. That's when Eugene lost it. His eyes went bright red, and he started shaking. Fist clenched, blood everywhere. Suddenly, the ground exploded with red energy, and our MC stood up, tattered clothes and all, red and black power just swirling around him. He was done playing nice. Oh my, is this what we call the power of friendship? Our guy looked absolutely crazy now. Full monster mode, red eyes, sharp fangs, claws out, energy snapping all over him. Cyrano was staring as if she'd just seen a ghost, muttering that Eugene's body was changing, and this was some next-level vampire stuff. Even the puddles of blood in the area started reacting to him, getting sucked dry. She giggled, all freaked out, and thought her master would have lost his mind if he saw this. She knew she had just witnessed something historic. For real. Right then, Eugene was moving so fast now, the demon barely had time to blink. Our hero went wild with those sharp claws, tearing into the monster. But the crazy part? Even after all that, the demon just healed itself. Like magic. The witch realized the whole maze was using the blood as a power-up for the monster. Like some twisted energy drink. She pieced it together. The missing people, the blood, the maze. It was all a giant sacrifice to some god, and now that god was pissed. Then things got biblical. The maze itself was alive. A god that ate humans. Those fucking guys were worshipping and sacrificing offerings to. They assumed only a messiah could stop this. And guess who that messiah looked just like from the back? Our MC. Standing tall, with cultists kneeling behind him. The voice basically begged for a reign of mercy, but Eugene? He was grinning like a devil, yellow eye burning, as if he wanted this god to get even angrier. Suddenly, all the blood in the place was gone, just sucked up by the maze itself. At the center, that golden orb crackled with purple lightning, and a new monster started forming. Bigger, nastier, horned, full Demon King mode. Cyrano almost lost it. She'd never heard of a monster escaping a dungeon before and had no clue what to do as she realized a town was nearby. Not great, man. That's when Miran, the water fairy, zipped over, yelling that she'd found an exit. But, surprise, a hole was already there, looking busted and about to collapse. The whole maze was falling apart, rocks crashing everywhere. The tiny fairy tried to drag our MC out of there, but the guy wasn't moving. Instead, he was standing over Galfredic's body, power pulsing around him. Even she stopped mid-sentence, freaked out by what she was seeing. Cyrano also watched, shocked, as Eugene bent over Galfredic. She couldn't believe a vampire was actually mourning a dead human. Like, what the hell, wasn't this guy supposed to be some monster? But he looked genuinely sad. And then, our hero did something totally wild. He leaned in and bit Galfredic right on the neck, fangs deep, blood splattering everywhere. Cyrano could only stare, thinking, damn, this vampire's got some noble blood in him. Meanwhile, a giant demon with wings and one creepy glowing red eye busting out of the Evergrow maze. This thing wasn't just big, it was nightmare fuel, stomping the ground so hard the whole forest shook, with purple lightning crackling off its body. And above it, just a blood-red moon, making the whole scene look like the end of the world. The townsfolk out there? Yeah, they looked up and realized something very, very bad was coming their way. But let's get back to our boy. Eugene was still deep inside that maze, in his full monster form, standing over Galfredic's lifeless body, blood splattered all over him. The mage was watching him like he was some supernatural king, which, let's be real, she kinda was right then. She asked if Eugene had ever heard of origin vampires. She explained that origins were basically the top dogs in the vampire world, the most noble and powerful. She admitted she hadn't known what he truly was until now, but it was clear, he had origin blood. Then she dropped an even bigger bomb. She said an origin vampire could actually bring someone back from the dead to serve them. Yeah, you heard that right. But it wasn't just a bite. You had to let the person drink your blood too. Right then, our MC remembered the last time he tried it. Poor Maverick, that bald mercenary dude, had his mind totally wrecked by the process. Yeah, our guy has done that. But he added, not everyone could handle it. Cyrano nodded, saying most humans would lose it. But Galfredic might be different, since he was tough mentally. She said her teacher once told her, If someone really strong-willed took in an Origin's blood, they could keep their mind and skills, even as a vampire. But there was a catch. That big boy was an honorable knight, and he might actually hate the idea that if he woke up as a vampire, he might see it as a huge insult and come after him and the witch. That would suck. But then, Cyrano glanced at Eugene and asked what he thought. Our boy, still dripping in blood, thought to himself that he'd never actually told him he was a vampire. He had no idea how the guy would react if he woke up as one. But honestly, he figured there was only one way to find out. Just ask him. Real subtle, right? So, our hero made his move. He leaned over Galfredic's body, fangs out, and bit down. Immediately, things started getting crazy. He realized his blood was pouring into him way too fast, and he couldn't pull his teeth out. Suddenly, the whole place filled with swirling red and black energy, and a voice, or maybe just the maze itself, announced that the inheritance ritual had started. It explained, all spooky-like, that the person being bitten would become the Lord's property, and all their powers would belong to their new master. Not creepy at all, right? The energy exploded, a massive red pillar of light shooting straight through the maze and blasting into the sky for everyone to see. Meanwhile, up in the town, everything was going straight to hell. Monsters busted out of the ruins, smashing through buildings, and people were running for their lives. It was chaos. Screams everywhere, creatures chasing after everyone, even a giant dragon thing covered in blood tearing through the streets. Some unlucky guy got grabbed by a purple snake monster, and the whole town was just burning, pure panic. And who was chilling in the middle of all this mess? Lugates. That fucking knight was standing there in his evil knight armor, grinning like he'd just won the lottery. He thought to himself that this was finally his big moment. The town was drowning in despair. The Minotaur demon was on a rampage, and soon he'd swoop in and play hero. He figured that once everyone was desperate enough, he'd show up, defeat the monster, and they'd all worship him as a messiah who saves everyone. Kinda twisted, but okay, bro. He assumes that was his reward for having given up all those offerings to the labyrinth until now, and it's all going to be worth it. Okay, now, back to the story. While the monsters kept attacking, people kept dying, and Luajets just drank it all in, waiting for his reward. But before that fucking knight doing his drama, suddenly, bam, a sudden flash of white light split a wolf monster's head in half. Standing there, looking like a demon himself, it was Eugene, still in his monstrous form. Red and black energy swirled around him, and his hair was flying everywhere. Not gonna lie, he looked so cool and scary at the same time. The fucking knight almost dropped his jaw, totally shocked. He couldn't believe our boy was still alive, since he was sure the Minotaur had finished him. He freaked out, wondering if he somehow got even stronger at the last second. Eugene just stood there, grinning like he wanted to ruin the fucking knight's whole day. He taunted Lugat, asking if Sir Jevon knew what kind of disaster he had started, but then said it didn't matter anymore. And he was going to pay for his sins, right here, right now. Of course, Lugat wasn't scared. He just started laughing, acting all smug, until a freaking explosion blasted through the street. Standing in front of him now was someone new, a transformed knight with pink hair, glowing red eyes, and fangs, looking mad as hell. This dude was so angry he could barely get the words out, telling Lugates he was ready for payback for being humiliated before, and called him Heretic Lugates, with a grin that promised a world of pain. Yep, things just got personal. And our MC? He was right there, red eyes burning, ready to turn this villain's evil plan into a nightmare. So, it was night, and the whole town was on fire, literally. This massive demon with horns and glowing purple skin was stomping around, making everyone lose their minds. People were running everywhere, screaming for their lives, while the demon just went nuts and shot out this huge wave of destruction. Not a fun night to be a villager, bro. But right in the middle of all that chaos, our boy Eugene showed up. And not just regular Eugene. Nah, this was Eugene in total monster mode. Red eyes, long wild hair, sharp fangs, the whole vampire package, looking like he just walked out of a nightmare. He started throwing hands with the demon, blasting it with red and black power so intense the ground shook. Some villagers stopped running when they saw him. At first they were scared, but then one dude noticed who it was. Someone shouted that there was a knight fighting the monster, and another said it had to be Sir Jan Eugene, the famous knight. People started crying, thinking they were actually going to survive. One guy yelled that our boy was fighting for them, and suddenly the mood flipped. These dudes went from terrified to hyped real quick. Then, the villagers started shouting that the rumored prophecy was correct and that Eugene was actually their messiah. He told them the heavens had sent Eugene for their salvation. Meanwhile, our hero Eugene was still beating the hell out of the demon, blasting it with crimson energy, and finally skewering it with this monster-sized spike of power. The demon let out a crazy roar and collapsed, leaving Eugene standing there, blood splattered, looking like an absolute beast while the town burned in the background. Villagers were losing it, but this time in a good way. Now, let's talk about Galfredic. Out in the ruins, he stood strong and proud, like he was reborn. Lugates had just fallen in front of him after they had a duel. The fucking knight, Lugates, who looked way different, was lying on the ground surrounded by a bunch of knocked-out cultists. His hand glowed pink, and he looked pissed off. Some cultists started screaming that their god had fallen and took off running, tripping over themselves. The fucking knight got up, eyes blazing red, and started shouting that he had inherited God's powers and would be the new god of the era. Bro was on a power trip for real, but his cultists did not believe him again, and they assumed it would get worse, so they ran trying to save their lives. The fucking knight, who had been so full of himself before, now looked like he had just seen a ghost. He asked what had happened to Galfredic's crazy strength, and he clearly started freaking out. Dude probably realized his whole plan was going up in flames. Meanwhile, the big boy, now with rocking red eyes and vampire fangs, stands before Lugates, looking like a total boss, mocking him by asking where his monstrous strength had been before. The fucking knight stared at him, horrified, wondering if he had always been that strong. Then, Galfredic turned to Eugene and called him master, asking for orders. Our MC, Eugene, with his monstrous face, just told Galfredic to kill every single one of them. Then the fucking knight lost it, trying to run away, sweating bullets and yelling that this couldn't be happening. He was nearly in tears, saying his dream was right there in front of him. But the big boy moved faster than anyone could blink, grabbed him, and got all up in his face. He asked where Lugates was going and said he needed to pay for screwing him over. The fucking knight tried to play it cool for 1 second, laughing and saying he knew neither Galfredic nor Eugene were human. But then he just started screaming, realizing he was totally screwed. The rest, well, let's just say, not a great ending for him. After all that, word spread fast across the land. Word of what Lugates has done is spreading so fast, and our boy, Eugene, was treated like a lord and a hero, with everyone throwing flowers. He walked through crowds next to Galfredic, who was smiling widely, but Eugene just looked serious. You could tell he only cared about one thing. His bro Galfredic was alive. That was the real win for our MC. Later, in a fancy room, things got a little loud. Miran, Eugene's tiny water fairy, was flying around bawling her eyes out. She hugged Galfredic's head and said that she was so worried about him. And the big boy? He was freaking out, asking what this thing was and why it was crying. Eugene sat at the table, chill as always, and explained that he could finally see it now. Miran got mad, puffing up and calling herself a great water spirit, not an it. She tried to brag that she was Eugene's first contractor. So, Galfredic was her junior, but our boy just grabbed her and stopped her speech, totally not impressed. He told him that she talked too much but was a little bit useful, which Miran did not appreciate. The big boy seemed surprised that he could see the tiny fairy, and our MC figured it was probably because he was his subordinate now. Galfredic looked shocked, but our boy got serious, telling him he'd have to start drinking animal blood from now on. He mentioned he needed monster blood twice a month and wasn't sure how it'd work for him. Then, he started thinking about vampire life and suddenly freaked out about the sun. Classic. He yelled if he had to avoid sunlight, but Miran told him, duh, unless he wanted to be toast. Before anyone could stop him, he ran right into the sunlight, just to check if he would burn. The tiny fairy went nuts, telling him he was an idiot, and that even Mr. Eugene had to work hard to survive sunlight. But the big boy stood there in the sun, completely fine. He checked his hands, looking shocked. Our boy just smiled a little and said he was fine too. Galfredic couldn't believe it. Then, out of nowhere, Cyranor's voice popped out, explaining that Eugene was an origin. She said only normal vampires burned in the sun, but origins were the noblest vampires and could walk around in daylight with no problem. She explained it was normal that Galfredic was okay too. Right then, our boy checked his body, letting his black scales fade away, and stood quietly in the sun. He looked at his friend, Galfredic, and honestly was kind of annoyed. He touched his face and wondered why he'd bothered hiding from sunlight all this time. The big boy started teasing him, asking if he was supposed to be part elf or something. He finally figured out why our MC always wore hats and avoided duels during the day. Just like that, Eugene just looked embarrassed and said it was the best he could do. Galfredic started getting hyped up, saying now our MC had no reason to turn down his duel requests. But suddenly, he got stuck trying to say Eugene's name. The witch told him he wasn't allowed to use Eugene's name anymore. He had to call him Master, since he was his subordinate now. The big boy was not happy about this and started yelling about how that rule was stupid, since they were friends. Our boy didn't say much, but there was a flashback. Back in the maze after the battle, he told Galfredic that he wasn't human anymore and that there'd be a lot of new dangers in his life. If he was upset, he didn't have to stick around. But he just smiled, all bloody and fierce. and said he didn't care about being human or not. He told Eugene the only thing that mattered was that our boy saved him, and he'd never forget that favor. He was fine being a subordinate and said he'd always stick with him, no matter what. Back to the present, Galfrida kept complaining that he wasn't allowed to call his friend by name, and Eugene told him to stop yelling at him as if he had any control. He even joked about sewing his mouth shut, which made him freeze. Their interaction now is kind of funny, isn't it? Suddenly, Galfredic snapped out of it and remembered something. He asked him what was up with Blondie and Partek, thinking about the blonde rookie and the mercenary captain. Eugene just smiled a little and said he'd told them to handle something quietly, wondering if they managed to pull it off. Meanwhile, our hero was now a legend. His best friend had been reborn as a fellow vampire, and the squad was about to get even more interesting. Not bad for a guy who used to hide from sunlight, huh? After that, inside this super fancy mansion, someone handed Eugene a scroll with a big red wax seal. Jevin Evergrow told our MC that St. Lagrand Abbey had sent him a letter of thanks. Apparently, they managed to kick out some bad people from the Abbey, all because of him. Then, Jevin started talking about these illegal anti-mana stones that the Templars were using for crazy raids and maybe even to grow their weird cult. At one point, people screamed and red crystals scattered everywhere. Things definitely got messy. The Lord of Evergrow went on, saying that our boy was the one who figured it all out and sent mercenaries to stop them. Our MC just sat there, looking all cool and smug, and said that Templars were supposed to follow God's will, but it was suspicious seeing them help with those raids. He wondered what kind of message from God could make them do all that, especially with all the scary rumors about the end of the world flying around. Then Jevin got a little awkward, then finally admitted that House Evergrow backed the Abbey, and they trusted those people a lot. But he also said if they hadn't discovered the heretics, the Evergrow family's honor could have been totally trashed. So, he thanked Eugene straight up, saying the people here respected him big time. He also told him to enjoy their praise and welcome, like he couldn't care less. Our boy replied that he was glad he could help. Then, he started to leave, but Jevin remembered something and turned to Galfredic, who was standing behind. He welcomed Galfredic back and said he was glad his friend was safe. After that, he was left alone, looking all serious and thinking hard about everything, probably planning his next noble move. Now, let's hit the tavern at night, way more fun. The place was packed, drinks were flying, and everyone was cheering about Galfredic's return. Some guys were even saying that the rumors about him being gone were terrifying, and they thought he'd never make it back. But Galfredic was chilling with a huge grin, saying he only got back in one piece because of everyone's help, especially his new master. Yeah, he called Eugene his master right there in public. Some dude at the table basically freaked out and asked if he was actually serving Eugene now. Then, a bunch of them turned to our MC and started begging to serve him too. Our boy just shut them down without even turning around, telling them nope, not interested. Classic. Hearing that, the big boy was cracking up, calling Eugene mean, but secretly he was thinking that the beer tasted like trash now. Guess, vampire taste buds don't like cheap booze. Raban, the rookie mercenary, noticed Galfredic's eyes were a weird new color and asked if something had happened in the labyrinth. He went quiet for a second, then changed the subject super fast, teasing him about the Abbey raid with Partek, wondering if the captain just babysat him. The rookie boy got flustered and swore up and down that he was a real mercenary now. The captain just laughed but then got serious, saying it was impressive how Eugene uncovered the truth about the Abbey, and that Lord Jevin looked super shocked too. Our MC just smiled that sneaky smile and asked what really surprised the Lord, like he knew more than he was letting on. The captain wondered if our boy actually believed the Abbey had sent him a letter and said truly thankful, or if Lugates, the villain from before, was just the fall guy. Eugene explained that he let them have an excuse. He told his crew to only arrest the Templars, not the actual abbess. If they'd raided the Abbey itself and messed up the Evergrow family's honor, well, he said they'd all be basically doomed. But if he gave them just a little space to blame someone, they only needed to punish one person. He assumes it's just Lord Jevin behind it all. Then, he told the captain that it was time to leave the city quietly that night. He was not interested in sticking around for the fallout, and you could tell he was being careful. Our boy took off fast, riding a black horse in the dark forest, cloak flapping behind him like something out of a scary story. But in their journey, there were troops in black robes chasing them. The captain shocked, and Raban even started panicking because they had been surrounded. While Eugene thought of the game played secretly in Evergrow, about how, even though Lugates was a criminal, he was also Lord Jevin's favorite knight. He was mad he didn't get to punish Lugates himself, since Galfredic already killed the guy. That was a huge insult, and a stain on Jevin's name, and our MC was not about to let that go. He kept thinking he was going to make Jevin pay for all this, even picturing putting a scar on that pretty little face. Not gonna lie, our boy sounded a bit scary there. But then, he's going out of his thought to face a reality where enemies surrounded his group. Then he charged into battle, slashing with his sword and yelling for everyone to stop. Horses reared, chaos everywhere, and Eugene just went to work. Mercenaries shouted to regroup, but then Galfredik showed up, totally hyped, yelling that their enemies were actually the ones surrounded, not them. Dude was having the time of his life. Then, without wasting so much time, the enemies already defeated, their hands were tied, and the captain told them not to move. Galfredik was super proud of their teamwork, said the tactics were great, and even complimented Eugene's sword skills, asking who he learned that from. Our MC just pointed at Galfredik, said he learned it from him. That left him totally shocked, as if he had no idea when he had ever taught him anything. Our MC just shrugged and said he wasn't lying. Then, Eugene thought back to when he turned the big boy into a vampire. He realized that when he gave him his blood, all the big guy's skills and experience just popped into his own head, like getting a cheat code installed. He started wondering whose voice he'd heard during that ritual, and if it was some illusion, or something worse. Suddenly, an old knight with a white beard, Sir Macaulay, popped up with two other knights and started yelling at Galfredik. He said Galfredik had no shame, had almost died in the dungeon, and blamed everything on Lugates. He even said Lord Jevon was going to offer him a spot on his estate. RMC was not having it. He grabbed the old knight by the collar and said he hoped they were all ready to die, since he'd only let one of them live. The big boy had to jump in, suggesting maybe they use the knights as hostages instead, since it was tradition to respect brave opponents and, hey, they could even get ransom money. Eugene decided that it was a decent idea, said the knights, just needed to be alive. When Galfredik asked what he meant, our boy cracked a thick wooden beam in his hand and promised to keep their limbs intact. That sounded painful. He was definitely making a point. And yeah, not long after that, you could hear they all start screaming and say sorry. But it seems our boy had another plan for them. Next scene, the captured knights were chilling in the Evergrow mansion, looking happier than ever. Sir Macaulay was honestly amazed at how nicely they were being treated. Priscilla Palin, the sharp guild lady, told Eugene not to worry, her people could handle everything. Eugene said good, and that they'd get ransom from Lord Jevon in exchange for these guys. She looked surprised when he said that, but our boy explained they were Jevon's knights, so they should be worth a lot. Then, our MC showed off a huge tear in his armor and asked her to fix it. He was a little grumpy, thinking his armor was supposed to be dragon-proof, but apparently, it wasn't so tough after all. She promised to make it even sturdier. He also told her to get Galfredik's new armor too. That big boy was so happy and could not believe it. Our MC just told him that, as his subordinate, he needed to look the part. The big guy said he was glad he stuck with Eugene. Man, he was like a puppy. Priscilla was thinking to herself that she really had good instincts for finding powerful people. Who would have thought he'd be able to make the famous Sir Galfredik one of his people? She figured giving Galfredik new armor was fine, since their crew brought in so much loot anyway. Good customer service, right? With guys like these, her business was going places. At the end, Priscilla asked Eugene if he had picked his next destination. Our MC said he planned to hit up more advanced dungeons for now. She smirked and told him that if he wanted bigger dreams, he needed more cash. She said she knew just the place if he was up for it. Eugene looked at her, totally surprised. Meanwhile, in another room, Jevon Evergrow is totally losing it in his fancy office. The poor guy slammed his fist on the desk so hard that wood flew everywhere. He was yelling about how none of his knights could do a thing. He was mad that all those House Evergrow knights got caught as hostages by just one guy. And that guy was, of course, our boy, Eugene. He was fuming, pacing around and thinking that he always knew Eugene was stronger than Lugates, but he never guessed he was that strong. He started asking himself if he should just let Eugene do whatever he wanted, even after what happened to his own knights. The guy was in full villain mode, eyes wide, crazy ideas spinning in his head. Then he looked down at a big map and pointed at a spot that was glowing. He remembered that our boy had come there with backing from the Palin Trading Company. So he figured out real quick that Eugene's next target would probably be another demon-infested area linked to that same company. Suddenly, Jevon's face twisted into a psycho grin, and he decided it was obvious where Eugene was headed. Carlsbagen Peninsula's Philia. Bro, you could just feel him plotting something nasty. Next thing you know, our hero Eugene was out at sea, cruising on this big ship. Miron, the sassy little fairy, started filling him in. She told him that Carlsbagen was pretty much free from the Kaler Central Church's influence. Then Galfredik added the information that the guy who used to run it, a Marquis Archibald, turned out to be a full-on cult freak who lost all his power after going off the deep end, and they're in a really complex situation because of that right now. The Bishop of Carlsbagen ran away as soon as the Marquisdom collapsed, so they lost their trust too. Eugene just smiled and said that sounded like good news. Galfredik, the big red-haired dude, laughed right along with him. Then Miron started flying around in a panic, yelling at them because the mage on the ship was straight up puking her guts out over the side. The woman looked like death. Eugene just stared and asked why she even bothered coming if she got so seasick. The mage wiped her mouth and said, in her super dramatic way, that she wanted to help the noble Origin with her magic. The big boy wasn't buying it at all and called her out, saying, "Come on, tell us the real reason, you raccoon." So, the mage announced that her main goal was to gather monster parts to create a chimera. Yeah, a straight-up monster project. She looked all fired up, waving her staff with a wild monster image behind her. She tried to act all loyal, saying she really did want to help and swore it on her magic. The big boy just rolled his eyes and told Eugene that basically, the mage just didn't want to get thrown overboard. The tiny fairy got it suspicious, but then she was mentioned by the mage saying, "Why wouldn't a spirit like her want to travel and collect gold?" Then Miran replied, "Why wouldn't I want it?" The mage looked super offended that a spirit would be into money. Miran just told her that if she wanted to talk trash, she better start paying up. Meanwhile, Galfredic joked that everyone seemed to have their own reasons for hanging around Eugene, but the truth was, they saw how great Eugene was. He pointed over at their mercenary buddies, who were busy arm wrestling and cheering each other, and must also be thinking the same. Then, out of nowhere, Galfredic teased Eugene about his own true purpose. Our MC, standing on the deck, started thinking for real about his goals. He admitted to himself that he had two big ones. First, to regain all his memories and figure out who he used to be, and second, to get revenge. He remembered dying in his past life and said he had to get stronger using the scarlet mana crystals so he wouldn't end up dead again. He was especially on edge about that crazy paladin from the Kalar Kingdom's church, the same guy who killed him last time. He knew those paladins never stopped chasing vampires, so he couldn't ever relax. Seeing our boy didn't answer his question, Galfredic just shrugged and said he didn't care what our boy's goals were. He said he owed Eugene his new life and was just excited for the adventures ahead. Then, our boy asked whether he wanted bigger things in life. Galfredic said knights should chase glory and honor, and that this sunlit journey was far better than death. The guy was honestly just happy to be here. He told Eugene that his goals were now Galfredic's goals too, and he'd do anything, Eugene asked. The loyalty was real with this one. Meanwhile, the tiny fairy, still zipping around, got all hyped and told Eugene she might love gold, but she liked being with him even more. She demanded to know if he was really going to save up all that money and build a giant golden castle. Even the seasick mage and the other mercenaries shouted that they'd help, and some even said they didn't care about money at all. But then, the mage tries to be honest that, yeah, he would like the materials from the monsters, however. Eugene just stared at her and said it would depend on how much the mage actually helped in the fights. The mage promised he'd do his best, trying to look all determined. Our hero sighed and thought to himself that, man, his life was way more complicated now. He actually had a bunch of people he needed to protect. But, for some weird reason, it didn't feel bad at all. If anything, he was starting to get used to it. Finally, their ship docked in this super busy harbor city called Mofern in the Karlsbagen Peninsula. There was a guy named Byrne waiting, looking all official with his guards. Byrne introduced himself as the captain of the local mercenary guild and said he was there to guide Eugene's crew to the Beogallan barony on behalf of the Palin Trading Company's Mofern branch. He told them they needed to move quickly because the schedule was tight, and Eugene just agreed. Now, the group was racing through the forest on horseback, with knights and a carriage tagging along. Byrne explained that the Beogallan barony was one of the few places around here that wasn't totally messed up. He admitted things were still rough though. They hadn't even managed to kill a single intermediate-level monster lately. Eugene guessed it was because of the wyverns, and Byrne confirmed it. Apparently, these wyverns always sent their harpies to wear out any raiding parties, then came in for the kill when everyone was tired. It was rough out there. Our MC was secretly pumped though. He figured this was a big chance to grab some more scarlet mana crystals and get stronger since the monster must be really advanced. Right then, Byrne gives him a suggestion if he meets with bandits. It's better for him just to pay them instead of fighting with them. Our boy was confused and asked what wyverns even had to do with bandits. The Baron explained, well, mostly he just whispered to Byrne in a panic that Eugene seriously wasn't someone to mess with, since he was sent by Preschella from the guild. Byrne was annoyed, thinking Eugene was just some spoiled noble who let his tough knights do all the work, and he couldn't have him dying to a bandit when he hadn't even gotten to the location. Well, someone just made a wrong guess about our hero here. Then Byrne just told our MC straight. Their job was to clear the demon realm, not waste time with bandits. Miran, for the record, did not like Byrne at all. Suddenly, Eugene's horse reared up, and he looked super focused. He'd sensed something was off. Without hesitation, our hero asked Galfredic for a spear. The big boy tossed it over, and Eugene leapt into the trees and threw the spear so hard it went straight through a bandit hiding in the bushes. Blood everywhere. The other bandits freaked out, yelling and cursing, and their leader called for an attack. All hell broke loose as bandits rushed the group. Byrne was freaking out, wondering how Eugene even noticed them when everyone else missed it. Our MC just told Byrne to protect the carriage, but Byrne wanted to just pay off the bandits instead of fighting. Eugene could not care less though. He told Byrne he was worrying too much. With a grin, Eugene jumped back on his horse and charged straight into battle, Galfredick right behind him, both ready for a good fight. Byrne was left in the dust, cursing about how he knew this was a terrible idea from the start and thinking Eugene was just another cocky noble who was going to get everyone in trouble. After that, our hero, Eugene, was checking out this super fancy sword. The thing was glowing a little, so you could tell it was not your usual sword. He stared at it and wondered out loud why a bunch of bandits had something this nice. Down below, the bandits looked pretty nervous. One of them explained that they took it from a guy who had said he stole it from House Parchilden. Then, this bald, tough-looking bandit dropped to his knees and begged Eugene to spare them. He even said they would become Eugene's slaves if he let them live. Our MC just looked at them and started to think, there were a lot of these bandits, after all, and taking care of them would use up a lot of his resources. The bald bandit, still on the ground, got even more dramatic. He said it was fine if they had to starve, they just needed water. Dude was really selling it hard. At this point, Byrne was standing with Eugene, and he was also thinking to himself that Eugene had wiped out 4 troublesome bandit groups in just 2 days. So, it made sense the vice leader of the Palin Trading Company had sent him. Now the bandits were just losing it, crying and begging for their lives. People couldn't help but point out how these same guys were horrible to the villagers before, but now they were on the ground, totally broken. Eugene pointed out they should get moving since they were behind schedule. But then one villager asked what he was planning to do with all these bandits. He was clearly confused and wanted to know if our boy was supposed to be protecting them. Galfredick, meanwhile, just started laughing like it was all a big joke. It looked like the bandits wanted Eugene to become the lord of the village. Our MC was like, what the hell? But then, a villager actually dropped to his knees and begged him to stay and be their hero. Eugene looked like he was thinking hard, while Byrne suddenly had a moment of realization. He remembered that all the bandits on the way had already been dealt with. Then he realized this was his chance to become a subordinate to a really cool knight like Eugene. He quickly went over to our boy and told him that even though Eugene had taken care of all the bad bandits, most of them were either dead or captured as slaves. He pointed out that the area around the village was now pretty safe. No trolls, no tigers, so Eugene could become the lord right away if he wanted. This surprised our boy Eugene and Miran as well. Eugene thought about how having authority could actually help him with the central church. But he also said the most important thing to him was the scarlet mana crystals, and he wondered if being a lord was worth splitting his focus and resources. At that exact moment, his underling came running up, looking totally freaked out. He shouted that there was a problem. The bandits they took as slaves had stolen the horses and bolted. Turns out, a few of them hid small weapons in their mouths and cut the ropes. Pretty sneaky for a bunch of losers. He explained that the bandits all attacked at once, and poor Raban got hurt while trying to feed them. He was sitting on the ground, holding his bleeding arm, and asked someone to get revenge for him. Eugene looked over, kind of amused, while his underling asked if they should chase the bandits. Our boy said he was thinking about it, but then he noticed the man had a scratch himself, though he said it was nothing. Most of the blood was Raban's anyway. But right then Eugene's face twisted in anger, his eyes glowing red. He was pissed, and said he couldn't believe those bandits hurt his own mercenaries, and swore he wouldn't let them live. Raban was just standing there, totally shocked and thinking Eugene was being way too obvious about who he liked. Galfredick was ready for action, grinning with his spear in hand, but our boy told him to chill and defend the village instead. He said to tell the village chief that he'd accept their offer and to take care of the injured men. Galfredick got all excited and asked if he should start calling Eugene my lord now. Our hero just marched off in his armor and cloak, looking like a total boss, saying they needed to finish this. That's when the story jumped to nighttime, and things got even more insane. The village was burning, and everyone was freaking out, yelling for water. Some people on horseback were riding away in the distance. The man said that while he was being held captive, he heard these guys talking about going to Philia to hunt wyverns. They were from Marin, and he figured they'd either leave soon or get eaten by those big monsters. He was laughing about how they would take over the village once the night was gone. But a group of villagers stopped a new group of bandits in the burning village, demanding to know if they were the ones who set the church on fire. The bandits were just smirking, saying it must have been nice for the villagers since the night killed all the other bandits, but now they were the new bosses. The bandit leader declared that they were the villagers' new lords, and swung his sword at anyone who looked at him funny. He even said they'd take over the silver mines too. What a jerk. That's when Eugene showed up and overheard the part about the silver mines. He thought to himself that it made sense there were so many bandits around if the place had something valuable like that. Without waiting, he killed the bandit right away. He stood over the fallen guy, covered in blood, looking super cold and scary. He taunted the other bandits, asking if this was really all they could do. Some tried to run, others begged for mercy, but Eugene wasn't having it. He went full vampire mode, eyes blazing red, moving so fast the bandits didn't stand a chance. Blood was flying, and one bandit even called him a monster before getting wrecked by Eugene's crazy powers. There were dead bodies and horses everywhere, and our boy just kept walking through it all, totally focused. After the fight, villagers gathered, looking terrified and confused. Some were holding kids, some had buckets of water, staring at Eugene like he was both their savior and their worst nightmare. Our MC told them not to be afraid and announced that he was Jan Eugene, a knight. He said all the bad guys who tried to take over the village were gone now, so they didn't have anything to fear as long as he was there to protect them. But before he could finish his speech, someone fired a crossbow bolt at him from the woods. Thank God Eugene blocked it with his sword and realized it was a bolt, not an arrow. Miran floated by his head and warned him that something was definitely wrong. She could feel the aura of an advanced monster out in the woods. So, Eugene climbed up in a tree, frowning, and said to himself that he already called dibs on this hunting ground. But then a new dude showed up. A white-haired, red-eyed vampire with a crossbow. This guy started yelling at him, calling him a stupid, uncultured swine of a roamer. Yeah, this was getting wild. Eugene dodged another bolt, surprised when he realized the attacker had the same vampire fangs and red eyes as himself. The other vampire noticed Eugene's shock and mocked him for being surprised to see another vampire, saying that it made sense since Eugene was an unaffiliated roamer. This new vampire, he called himself Del Mondo of the Noferus clan, stood there looking all dramatic and ordered our MC to kneel. He even called our protagonist a roamer mutt. What the hell, right? Looks like our hero was going to kick his ass so bad. Anyway, not long after, that brat vampire got slapped so bad. He was now on his knees, totally covered in blood and freaking out. He begged for forgiveness, saying he was super sorry for not recognizing who he was dealing with. The poor guy was shaking so hard, he looked like he might just fall apart. He started yelling that he had messed up big time and should probably get a silver stake through his heart for what he'd done. Yikes, that's dramatic. But you know what? That brat, Del Mondo, was thinking to himself that he'd never heard of an origin vampire that was a roamer, which basically means a vampire without a clan, using a silver sword. He was basically panicking, wondering if Eugene had attacked him on purpose, knowing it'd hurt vampires more. He looked up at our hero, trying to talk his way out. But Eugene told Del Mondo straight up that he could tell that man wasn't the big boss of Noferos. Then, even asked if Del Mondo's so-called father really told him to just attack other vampires like this. The man shook his head, all nervous, and said no, he totally acted on his own and was just being stupid. The guy even collapsed on the ground, full-on sobbing, saying if anyone had to die, it should only be him. Miran just watched, saying she couldn't believe someone could break down that badly. Eugene suddenly remembered the witch had explained that a vampire's parent is whoever turned them into a vampire in the first place. So, our hero thought to himself that Romari had been right. Vampires cared a lot about their clans and who was at the top. Now, Eugene's eyes started glowing all scary red, and he gave off this dark, threatening vibe. Del Mondo got even more scared. Eugene wondered if maybe he should mess with Del Mondo a little more, just for fun. He asked why he should trust someone who had started all this mess in the first place. Del Mondo freaked out, slamming his head on the ground and promising on the Noferos bloodline and his father's name that he'd do anything to make it right. He was basically groveling at this point, begging for forgiveness. Our MC looked down at him, all cold and serious, and asked if the man would really do anything. The next day, Eugene was riding his horse through a river while Miran floated beside him. She asked if our boy was really going to use Del Mondo. Well, he said Del Mondo had sworn on both his clan and his father, so he figured they could trust him. But then, Miran added that she'd heard vampires were famous for being sneaky and terrible. So, our boy just gave this smug grin and said he was one of those dark kin too, so the fairy should know what to expect. Suddenly, Byrne pointed out a castle in the distance and told Eugene they were almost there. Our protagonist recognized it as Baron Beogalen's castle, and Byrne thanked him for coming all this way. Inside the castle, things got political. Eugene and the gang stood in front of Baron Beogalen, who looked pretty annoyed. The Baron explained that he couldn't give them more soldiers for their mission and said ruling a territory wasn't easy. There was always some problem with money or troops. He told Eugene, as a knight, he should understand how tough it was. Our boy was not impressed. He realized they'd have to handle the dangerous mission with only their own small group. So, he came up with a plan. He told the Baron that if they weren't getting more backup, the reward for success needed to be bigger. He pointed out that this was the third time people had tried and failed to clear out the ruins, so the Baron should pay up if he wanted results. The Baron, who was pretty shady, suddenly smiled and agreed. He liked Eugene's bold style. He said he'd give him half the monster loot and magic stones if they succeeded. Our MC took the contract, just smiled and acted all polite, saying he'd heard the Baron was generous. Once that was settled, the Baron said the mission could start tomorrow and that he'd send a guide. He told them to go rest for the night. Eugene and his crew turned to leave, and as they walked through the castle halls, his underling merchant asked if the meeting went well. Eugene just said it was hard to say, they weren't getting more troops, but at least the reward was bigger. The man was surprised, even complained that it was unfair. But Galfredick tried to cheer him up, saying they trusted their boss and would stick together no matter what. Reuben agreed, saying he'd never doubted Eugene either. The man just smiled. Yeah, his boss was always right. The next day, the whole crew rode out from the castle, heading for the Philia ruins, ready for whatever came next. Meanwhile, a few castle guards watched from a distance, gossiping about how strange it was that the third subjugation team was leaving with so few people. One guy thought our MC looked awesome in his black armor, but he was still worried. He said they probably didn't know much about wyverns, and it all seemed risky as hell. No matter how strong the knight was, this feeling was unsettling. So, as Eugene rode through the gate, the man earlier rushed over to him and called out and asking them to wait. Miran noticed him first, and Eugene turned to see what was up. The man said he had important news and begged them to give him a minute. That sounded suspicious already. Meanwhile, back in the castle, Sir Oleg, a big knight, was with Baron Beogalin. The knight handed over the bloody sack, saying it was loot from a roamer they caught near the castle, just the kind of stuff the Baron liked. The Baron looked at the loot and acted all happy, saying he was so proud to have a knight like Oleg who could hunt down monsters for him. But then the Baron got serious. He told Oleg there was something more important than monster loot. He was mad because the black-armored knight, Jan Eugene, had insulted him. The Baron wanted revenge. He said Eugene was leading the third group into the demon ruins and would probably die fast, but if he somehow made it out, Oleg should kill him on the spot. Hearing that, Oleg was furious at how Eugene insulted the Baron and swore he'd bring down the hammer for his lord. The Baron just grinned, counting his gold coins, totally pleased about his sneaky plan, especially after getting this much gold. Jebin Evergrow, the noble from the previous part, had sent the Baron all this money. He thought to himself that he'd get 100 gold coins more if Eugene died out there for real, and there was no way he'd turn down that kind of money. The letter was nasty, full of hidden malice, but the Baron just smirked and told himself he had nothing to lose if an outsider like Eugene died. So, it's a big win for him. So, with everyone secretly plotting against him, our hero rode off into the sunset, totally unaware that half the castle wanted him dead. Bro, things were about to get ugly.